Hello there, friends. This is Spencer Michaud. Today we're going to be talking about the new moon in the third decan of Capricorn. Hope that you're having a wonderful Friday afternoon out there. We're going to be dissecting all of the different parts of this new moon. We're going to be talking about the third 10-degree section of Capricorn. We're going to talk about its host, Saturn, in Pisces. There's a trine to Uranus with this new moon. We've got a void of course moon that's happening shortly afterwards. We have Saturn and Neptune traveling together, getting ready to move into Aries, and we've got an opposition with this lunation to Jupiter in Cancer. We're going to break it all down for you. Please, if you are joining me here today, let me know that you're here in the chat. I love welcoming some friends in here. I've got a few friends who have already stopped in. Mare is here, says Paintings by Mare, says hi from the studio in Maine. Oil painting with gloves on, so no typing for me. I'll be listening. Oh, it's nice to see you, Mare. Hope that you're creating something wonderful today. Always enjoy seeing all of your beautiful creations. Mare does all sorts of wonderful pet portraits. She's doing a series on birds. It's really cool. And I'm excited to be part of your creative journey, even if it's in the background there, my friend. Winter is here. What's up, Winter? Says hi, all stopping in from Massachusetts. Excited to hear about this new moon. Yeah, there's some really interesting stuff going on here, and especially in the weeks ahead as the new moon unfolds. So I'll try to do my best to shine light for you here, Winter, and hope everything's going well your way, my friend. Javiera says, hey, hope everyone is well today. I hope you're doing well today too, Javiera. I hope everything's going well for you up in Ontario, and the winter is treating you well, my friend. Okay. Couple announcements before we start into the new moon in Capricorn 3, which is our topic today. Couple things. You can find me, friends, over at SpencerMichaud.com. I've got a number of offerings up there at my website and the Book Now button. You can find all sorts of different types of readings. You can find things where I'm breaking down your natal chart. That's called a mythos reading. It's where we spend a couple hours together talking about the decans in your chart, the fixed stars, the tarot cards associated with each 10-degree section of each planet in your chart. We kind of make a roadmap for understanding where you've been, where you are now, and where you want to go. And I think that's a great use of astrology, just being able to see the narrative and the story of our lives. And we're going to talk about that a little bit today, narratives and stories. I think a lot of the things that we assume are truths are just stories that we've accepted. And I think that sometimes our natal chart, we've learned one particular story around it, and sometimes getting a new story can be really helpful for taking actions that can change our realities. So find me at SpencerMichaud.com. You can also visit the store at SpencerMichaud.com, where I have a number of things that I offer in digital form. So I have a Decans series where I have 3 to 4 hour workshops for each specific sign, and each decan webinar contains 3 decans that we talk about. I have a series with my beautiful partner, Tanya Andrews, called Dignity and Devotion, where we examine the 7 traditional planets and help you to understand how to make planetary elections from those particular planetary placements. And then I also have a Stars and Cards talk where I talk about the relationship between tarot and astrology. You can find my beautiful partner, Tanya Andrews, over at Third Coast Mojo, which is an Etsy account where she shares all of these beautiful, magically elected, planetary elected oils, soaps, salts, herbal blends, etc. She has some new stuff that's coming out, so make sure you signed up on my newsletter to know when the Third Coast Mojo stuff is coming out. But Just Judge is the newest offering from Third Coast Mojo. It was elected with an exalted Cancer Jupiter. Of course, Jupiter is associated with the law, the legal system, with good judgment. And this is something, if you, it's a traditional conjure formula of a court case oil. So if you're having any legal challenges, especially with how things have been going in the collective lately, this is a great one to help you out with that. There's also a base exalted Jupiter series with Jupiter and Cancer, great for just creating abundance, for increasing your luck, increasing your prosperity, increasing your generosity. I've been wearing this exalted Jupiter oil recently, and I've just been feeling uh, very generous lately. As far as I just want to give, I want to stoke those wheels of reciprocity, and sometimes not even with any thought of return. I think that one of the things I've been learning a lot about, especially in indigenous cultures, is our wealth is not necessarily measured by how much we have and how much we receive, but how much we can give to others. And I think coming into alignment with that type of thinking is something that Jupiter, exalted Jupiter in Cancer, can really help us with. And this is a really great way to kind of segue into our new moon in Capricorn 3, because Capricorn 3 there might be some instances of wanting to hoard, and this might be a great way to keep those flows of reciprocity moving within our lives. Also, obviously, there's a monetary element to this new moon in Capricorn, and the Magnificent Money series is part of the Jupiter in Cancer series as well. So even if you do need to utilize that type of currency, which we all sort of still do in this system that we're a part of, this can help you to get what you need. All right, so that's Third Coast Mojo. Of course, you can find information about Third Coast Mojo and about when I'm going live in my newsletter. And there's a link to sign up to that in the description of this video or wherever you're consuming this podcast today. And that can really help keep you up to date with when I'm going live, with what offerings are coming from Third Coast Mojo, with new classes, etc. I've also been including a song of the week that has some astrological significations. This week's song was Black Capricorn Day by Jamiroquai, solving the challenge of feeling a little bit melancholy that we can sometimes feel in Capricorn Saturnine seasons, with the power of funk to uplift us. Right? I think it was I love Jamiroquai. I love his his funky jams. So hopefully that brightened your day. But yeah, sign up for the newsletter, and I hope to see you there. Finally, you can support the channel today by purchasing a super chat while I'm live on YouTube. You can also purchase a super thanks after the fact if you're a YouTube member or a YouTube subscriber. And you can also go to buymeacoffee.com, which is a Patreon-like website that helps support the channel and helps me to keep continuing to do this work. So thank you, everyone who's been able to support the channel in that way, and appreciate all of your support today. All right, so I've got for you for announcements. I've got some more friends stopping in, so let's welcome a few more friends here. What do you say? We got a number of friends stopping in. Maru's here, says hi, joining from the start today. Nice to see you, Mara. I believe Maru is joining us from Germany via Argentina, if my memory serves me correctly. I love that we have such a global community here. We'll talk about sort of the way to think about how to the externalization of the costs that we have through doing business today, and how sometimes when we put our energy towards increasing growth, etc., we have to think about what is the cost? What is the cost to our neighbors? What is the cost to our global community members? What is the cost to our earth? A lot of those things we're going to talk about today, and just having people stop in from all over the world just reminds me that we share this planet with so many beautiful souls, and it's not just about individual nationalistic thinking. And really grateful for all of you who keep coming from around the world. So appreciate you, Mara, today. Ani is here. Says, looking forward to this cast today. Tanya's new exalted Jupiter is lovely. Ooh, thank you, Ani, for hyping that up a little bit. It is really good stuff. She is an excellent elector of charts and has a lot of great wisdom, has done a lot of great work with the Picatrix and with various other magical grimoires. It really is a passion of hers, and we talk about some of the elections together sometimes, but she is an expert in this as well. So I am just so grateful to be partnering with her with all of this as well. So thank you for the kind words with that. All right, Honey says, apologies, most of my typos are autocorrect. Okay, hope you're well too, friend. The generosity is from that beautiful disseminating moon applying to Jupiter. Yeah, the Jupiter election was awesome. There was a couple different choices we could have made with that, or that Tanya could have made with this, and just choosing the Taurus moon as the ruler of the chart was pretty awesome. I think there was some really good stuff coming out of that chart. And of course, Jupiter being hosted by that moon, that exalted moon, there's a lot of exaltation energy and a lot of sharing energy that comes through that Jupiter election. And I've just been really enjoying wearing it and kind of seeing the manifestations of that, because really, when we share what we have with others, we are increasing ourselves. We're not diminishing ourselves. And this is a truth that I've been really working very hard to incorporate into my my psychological narrative and belief system through the books that I've been sharing with people, like Sacred Economics, Money, Gift, and Society in the Age of Transition by Charles Eisenstein. I'm really finding a lot of truth in this. A lot of feelings I've had about feeling out of sync with the way that we have done economics over the course of my lifetime and over the course of many thousands of years. There's just something that feels off about it. And we're seeing the results of that by the stripping of our planet, the stripping of our trust in one another. I think this is something that is the core fundamental thing that is coming out of this book, is we need to learn to trust each other. We need to learn to cooperate with one another. And by doing so, we can enrich one another far beyond what we could as competing individuals. And it's just something that I'm learning more and more about, and trying to reprogram my own thinking around it. And it's not always easy. A lot of the ways that we've thought about creating abundance in our life has come through fear of scarcity, through fear of not having enough, through manufactured scarcity from the powers that be, and through survival feelings, right? Where we feel like we need to act in a certain way to be able to survive. And this is something that's going to take a while as a community to start thinking of what are the new possibilities. Do we have to accept this old model? Do we have to accept the stories and the beliefs that were given to us and passed down through a number of generations? How can we imagine like a more beautiful world that's possible? That's really the name of another one of Eisenstein's books. And that's what I'm attempting to do here. And I'll attempt to do that with you here today, because I know that there's been a lot of things in the collective that have been really frustrating and challenging. And how do we start to visualize what we do want when we aren't seeing what we want? When all that we're seeing in the collective day after day is an increase in the noise connected with fear, increase in the noise connected with isolation, competition. More for me means less for you. Like these are all stories. Even money itself is a story. It's a set of relationships and agreements. And I think these are important concepts to internalize as we move into this new moon in Capricorn. One that is very associated, this decan is very associated with managing material resources, with the responsibility that we have when we become in charge of anybody, whether it's ourselves or of an institution or of a group or a business, etc. All of these things require a desire to be of service, whether that's in service of your customers or in service of your neighbors. So these are really important things to think about. And I don't have all the answers yet. And I want to preface what I'm saying today with, as astrologers, I think curiosity is the best way to be an astrologer, a person, etc. And when we start to think that we have the market cornered, whether it's on a technique or on an idea or anything like that, then what we're serving is the forces of separation, the forces of turning the commons of the ideas into something that is monetized and that is privatized. And we've seen the carrying capacity of that with this particular earth start to suffer under the weight of that, the weight of creating waste, of creating isolation, and the externalization of costs. We'll talk about that idea today. The externalization of costs is something that is really eye-opening for me, especially as an American, as a country who has externalized costs for a long period of time. Couple centuries we've been doing this. And a lot of times we are worried about our economy. How do we make things less expensive, right? We're all suffering under the weight of inflation, et cetera. And I think we have to start asking different questions. What is the cost of what we are making? What is not only the physical monetary cost of what we're making, but what is the environmental cost of what we're making? What is the social cost of what we're making? What is the relationship cost of what we're making with our neighbors, the friends that we share this beautiful earth with? All of those things are, I think, really interesting to explore, and in ways that we might not normally think about, economics. So let's keep going. Okay. Hey, Oracle with Aish Rose is here again. Nice to see you coming back again, my friend. Thank you for joining us in the UK once again. Love it when people come back the next week. It's like, oh, we're just got this weekly meetup. I love it. Love that we're creating community in that way. Okay, so let's talk about this new moon in Capricorn. I think it's impossible to not think philosophically about some of the issues that we're facing in the world as we try to talk about the astrology, the technical astrology. I'm a believer that talking solely about just the technical parts of the astrological placements is very disconnected from the realities that we are living. So how do we reconnect these? How do we get out of that hyper-rationalism that the Cartesian thinking has brought to us, that has led us to this age of isolation and separation? So we have to think about, when we're talking about the astrological placements, what does that mean for us in our daily lives? What does that mean for us when we're trying to say, well, I'm going to utilize this knowledge to take action in my world? So let's just talk about some of the technical details first, and then we'll figure out what that's going to mean for us moving forward. So I'm going to bring the chart up here so you can see on the side here. We've got the new moon in Capricorn 3, January 18th. This is coming up this Sunday. Some of the timing of doing this, usually I'm a little bit more in advance with the lunations, but this is how it worked out this time. So January 18th, Sunday, 2:51 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Make the appropriate adjustment for your time zone. A couple features with this new moon. It is going to be in that third decan of Capricorn. We will break that down in great detail, associated with the Four of Pentacles, talking about taking on responsibility and managing the resources that we have, being able to be of service to our communities. It's a solar decan. So we're going to be working with kind of this Sun-Saturn energy, right? Where we're feeling the weight of our responsibilities. We're feeling like we might have to do some things that aren't necessarily fun, but we kind of are bound to them. And how do we take on that mantle of responsibility? What is the righteous way to do so? What is the way to be able to serve people and be in leadership positions that are not exploitive, right? That are service-based, community-based. This new moon's going to be trine Uranus. So we have a trine from the big stack up in Capricorn that we'll talk about in a second, right? Because we have Mercury and Mars co-present. All of these planets are making trines to Uranus in Taurus 3. So this new moon may be laying out some new ways of thinking. I know in my own personal experience, I've been trying to read this new material, to envision a new story, a new mythology, a new way of accepting my reality, my world, and maybe then trying to share that and say, well, what do you guys think about this? Is this a viable, story? What do you have to add to this narrative, right? Then we can co-create the story. So rather than just being, forced a narrative upon us, we get to co-create it together and say, hey, maybe we make a little adjustment here. That's a really cool idea. How about this? This is how we start to co-create our reality together. So the new moon trine Uranus, helping us to solve problems. Uranus in Taurus 3 talks a lot about being able to remedy things that have fallen into disrepair. And I think in a lot of ways, we can look around and see a lot of things in our realities right now that have fallen into disrepair. We can see our the justness and the fairness of our economic system as wealth becomes more polarized. We can see the, I guess, the rule of law, I guess, starting to crumble and disintegrate around us. We can see our environmental systems around us, nature, starting to not starting to, but coming to carrying capacity for the waste that we've created. Our relationships with one another, not only in our communities, but in other countries and things of that nature. We've started to see the fracturing of some of these things. So how do we start to repair the damage? How do we start to envision a world that we want to live in rather than one that we're going to fear living within? So new ideas, I think, are part of this new moon. New ways of communicating with one another and potentially new solutions to old problems. The new moon's also opposite Jupiter. Okay, so retrograde Jupiter in the second decan of Cancer. We may be trying to figure out how to create abundance, but especially with Jupiter in the second decan of Cancer, within a safe space. How do we grow these ideas to maturity without letting them be threatened by outside forces that would tend to either criticize them or cast doubt within our minds? I hesitate sometimes to share some of the ideas that I'm learning about too soon because I'm not fully formulated. I don't have the full picture yet. As you can see in this book, I'm about halfway through. And the first half of the book talks about the history of money, the history of usury or debt or interest, and the history of economics, the history of how we've exchanged goods and services and turned the commons of spiritual, intellectual, and natural capital into money, and then it started to exchange it. That can be really depressing at first, seeing how we've gotten to this point. The second half of the book has more of the solution-orientated things. So every time we go through a new consciousness expanding type of experience, we sort of have to protect that energy. We have to say, how do we maybe not share all of these ideas yet before they're fully cooked? And I know that I'm guilty of sometimes trying to share things before it's fully cooked in my mind, but I'm just excited about these things. And I think, how do we balance out our excitement about learning something new with the new moon and Mercury and Mars trining Uranus with the need to protect that so that it can grow to its full fruition, so that we can actually take action on those ideas so they don't just get stuck in the idea place. This is true when we're starting a business too. Sometimes we have a great idea that we are trying to put together. One of the most beautiful phrases in my household is, there's no bad ideas in the brainstorm. This is usually my partner, Tanya, saying this to me when I have a crazy idea and she doesn't want to like pour cold water on it, right? She's like, there's no bad ideas in the brainstorm. But really what she's saying is, I'm skeptical. Let's flesh it out a little bit more first. So this new moon, I think that is a good way to think about things. No bad ideas in the brainstorm, right? We are exploring. If we cut off our exploratory impulses and say, well, that's not going to work because of A, B, C, and D, we're really kind of already defeating any possibility of getting out of the old stories and ruts that we've cast ourselves as characters within. And I think it's really valuable to be able to leave some space for exploration. And I think that the opposition with Jupiter retrograde in Cancer 2 leaves some space to say, maybe this idea isn't fully formed yet, but how do we protect it? How do we let it grow into something that can survive the harsh realities of the world? So that's going to be part of our balancing point with this new moon, is learning new things, trying to protect those new ideas, those baby ideas, those fledgling ideas that could lead to prosperity, to growth and abundance, and to maturity. I think that this is something I'm really liking about sacred economics. It's not necessarily putting blame on an individual, although individuals can be responsible for some of these challenges. It's more about systemic issues, and it's also about not demonizing the last 10,000 years of human history and saying, well, this was This was the idea that as human beings, we were kind of childlike. We treated our earth as mother. And that usually, sometimes, not all the time, but in a lot of relationships between child and mother, there is a somewhat of a one-way kind of one-way exchange. The mother is giving. And if we think of our earth as a mother that is given to us over the course of 10,000 years, that is a very childlike or adolescent type of relationship that we have to the earth. Now, what Charles is talking about is how do we mature as a species towards an adulthood, an adult relationship, not seeing our earth as mother, but our earth as lover. And if we see this earth as lover, we care about what happens to her. We care that what happens to us happens to them. We are one with that in that relationship. You know, how many of you have really passionate relationships and care about what happens to your partner? You know, you wouldn't abuse your partner because you would know that would, I mean, you and her are one, or you and him are one, right? This is the transition of a more mature relationship to our earth, to our resources, to each other, an adult one, rather than one that is based on a one-way flow. So really interesting stuff that I think we can apply here. Mars and Mercury are co-present with the sun and the moon. So we have really a big, I think, faction of planets, a big concentration of energy in Capricorn III. So not only are our minds directed with a spotlight with the sun on Capricorn III, but the moon is helping us to manifest from that place. The moon is challenged in that decan. It is in its exile. So we might not have all the resources that we need at this moment to manifest instantaneously or the way that we want to, but we can come up with new ideas with Mercury here on how to do so. We can learn how to create strategies that can help us moving forward with an exalted Mars in Capricorn. This is, I think, really important part of this is not about instant gratification. This is not an instant gratification new moon. This is a delayed gratification new moon. This is where we're creating the structures and the accountability that's going to help move us forward into success, into the future for the long haul, not for just, being able to get what we want tomorrow. And then after that, well, we have to live with the consequences of not thinking long range. All right. And then finally, the moon is going to be out of bounds here. So this is a maverick moon that is not necessarily following the rules. We might be feeling more emotional. We might be feeling more, I don't know, just more in our thoughts and memories. Our bodies may be pushed to the extreme with this new moon. We will break all of that down in a second. All right, so what I'm going to do now is, if you will forgive me, I have a lamp in my office that is one of those up-facing lamps, and every once in a while, over the course of having it be on, a bug or stink bug will return to the light, and that has happened at this moment. So I'm going to go deal with that so that I can breathe. I'll be right back. Thank you, friends, for your patience. And we're back. Yeah, every once in a while there'll be a bug that will just like fly right into the lamp, and then it's just like smoke city. And that actually started happening right at the beginning of my breakdown of the new moon in Capricorn. And I was hanging on as long as I could. But sometimes we have to take care of ourselves and put on our oxygen mask right before we jump off the plane. Okay, I'm just checking back in with our chat here. What do we got here? What do we got? Javier says, can we start on Saturday? I want to see what's building up. Well, we still got a balsamic moon coming on Saturday, right? Uh, but yes, starting to visualize what you want. You can start letting go of the old narratives up till Saturday. I think that's a really great way to prepare for that new moon for sure. Carol is here. What's up, Carol? Nice to see you. Hope you're doing well, my friend. Nice. Thank you for stopping in on the chat. Ani says, repeat the name and the author of the book, please. This is Sacred Economics, Money, Gift, and Society in the Age of Transition, the revised edition by Charles Eisenstein, who is also the author of Climate, A New Story, and The More Beautiful World Our Hearts Know Is Possible. He is a social philosopher. He is a very, very intelligent person. I believe he's a Virgo sun with Jupiter in Virgo. And I looked up his chart. He's got a bunch of he's got Venus in Libra, and he also has Mars in Capricorn. I think he has Mars in Capricorn 3. So he's thinking about delayed gratification. He's thinking about the big picture. But he's also, what I love about him too, is it's not just in his head. He is very good at saying, here are the problems. Here is a new vision of what we might be able to create together. Here are some practical, like daily habits and steps that we can enact in our everyday lives. I love that. I love when an author does that. I hate when an author makes me have an existential crisis and then just sends me off into the world and there's nothing I can do about it. That's not what this is. So again, I'm breaking one of my own Cancer 2 rules about protecting an idea. But I'm so excited about it. I want to start talking it out. You know, I want to start sharing these ideas. I'm just really fired up about it because he's giving voice to a lot of things I've felt over the course of my life. The injustice of our system that we were born into, and the stories that we tell each other about to justify the actions that we are taking against this planet and against each other. And it doesn't have to be that way. Like for thousands and thousands of years before the monetary system, we had a lot of cooperative societies, and there's examples of those in this literature as well. Maro says the Earth Mother relationship is interesting, seeing how we as a society have been relating to women, right? Yeah, we've had some struggles, right, with patriarchal society. So how do we start to become in an equal relationship with the Earth rather than one where we are expecting to be provided for without any thought of return, right? And then I was even taking this a step further in my mind. I was like, what happens when we get into humanity's elderhood, where we do things to take care of this Earth without necessarily thinking of what we get from it, right? Like where we turn into the parental role, the stewardship role for the Earth, rather than thinking of it as, you know, something we dominate that is here to serve us. We can start by coming into a cyclical, reciprocal relationship with it of equality, and then we might evolve potentially to one where we take care of it, you know, where we are its mother on some level, and that's exciting to me. So we also have someone stopping in from India. Says, hello, sir. I'm from India. Nice to see you, friend. Hope that you are doing well over there across the pond. Love to see my international friends, and I hope that you, I hope we serve you well today. Okay, so let's keep rolling on. So we have that new moon. We've talked about kind of our big picture themes. Let's start talking about the sun and the moon in Capricorn 3. Okay, so here is the Deccan flashcard for Capricorn 3. And in it, you can see that we have the Four of Pentacles. And this is a Deccan, the book T, which those of you who are unfamiliar with the book T, it's a Golden Dawn reference, right? That talks about the Decans, that talks about the tarot, and talks about all of these esoteric syncretizations. The Book of Thoth is an Aleister Crowley, like sort of a, I don't know if it's a competing, it's an alternate view of the Decans and of the tarot. And that's, it's called the Lord of Power in the Book of Thoth. So the Lord of Earthly Power and the Lord of Power. Austin Coppock in his book 36 Faces calls it the throne. Partially, he's describing this as a place where we are taking on mantles and seats of responsibility, because of its relationship with the sun as the Decanic ruler. So themes we can think about with this decan: administration of power. Sometimes we see things in the collective related to kings, CEOs, responsible positions, where we feel the not only seeing the benefits of responsibility, but feeling the weight of responsibility. Those of us who are trying to be, I don't know, going through the world in a way that is doing less harm, sometimes we feel the weight of responsibility because we know it's a service position. We're not trying to have power and dominion over others. We want to serve people. So that can feel like a lot of weight, which is very Saturnine. Enslavement to the material world is associated with this decan on some level. I would like to start shifting language around that. I've been starting this on the channel a little bit. A lot of the early 20th century, late 1800s, 19th century language, and especially post Rene Descartes, talks a lot about the separation between mind, soul, and body. And a lot of the language that is infused into some of even these decans and the tarot cards, it's very separatist. It's very rational, quote unquote. It is very unensouled. So when we talk about enslavement to the material world, I think there is a difference in thinking about that. It's not that to become spiritual, we need to leave materiality behind. It is more about how do we become in right relationship with the material world, right? It's more about how do we become effective stewards of these resources or these gifts. Let's not even think about them as resources anymore. The other book that's really given me a lot of insight into this is called Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer, who is an indigenous biologist. And she, in one of her chapters, talks about, what if we started thinking about the Department of Natural Resources as the Department of Gifts? We might treat a gift differently than we would a resource that is unensouled, that has just become this faceless, soulless thing, right? We turn things that have intrinsic meaning into this homogenized money, into a resource. And that's taking the sacredness out of money and economics. That is another point that Charles Eisenstein makes in this book that is really, really attractive. It's how do we think about these means of exchange that become sacred once again? Because we are living a physical reality. And we can argue the nature of the soul, but we have to deal with physical reality. And when we start living for the next life, this is something I've always had a lot of problems with. When we start living for, well, are we going to get our piece of sky pie, right? Are we going to get our, heavenly reward? It is that is the type of thinking that leads to us destroying the gifts that we enjoy on this planet and destroying our relationships with one another. And I think that is a huge shift in our thinking. Is how do we start to think about right relationship rather than how do we release our attachments that are impossible to release completely. I will say, when I'm talking about enslavement to the material world, I think we can talk about the releasing of hoarding mentality. I think we can talk about the releasing of the Wendigo mindset, the greed that comes from becoming a stopping point for wealth, for resources, for land, for anything, for power. When we become stopping points for those things, that's when we have fallen victim to the enslavement to the material world that is talked about in this Decanic material. So how do we become great facilitators for the movement of these resources? Because a lot of times what we see in literature about money, economics, is we have this idea that resources are scarce. I don't necessarily think that that is true. I think that the distribution of resources is ineffective. And how do we become facilitators? If we want to become great, we want to become skilled in this decan. How do we become facilitators for the exchanges that will help one another? I don't think money is inherently evil. I don't think money is inherently bad. But I do think that the stopping of the flow of it is what leads to almost every problem we are experiencing as a human species and the relationship we have to other non-human species on the planet. It really does boil down to it. We worship at the altar of currency, right? We worship the altar of money. And it has to become actually something actually sacred rather than something disembodied, if that makes sense. So gathering wealth is a Capricorn III type of experience. We have warnings in this decan, like where we talk about King Midas, right? Where everything we touch turns to gold, and our desire for that. For those of you who aren't familiar with King Midas, so I'll just read a little excerpt from theoi.com. It says, Midas was a wealthy king of Phrygia in Anatolia. When Silenus, or Silenus, an elderly companion of the god Dionysus, was separated from his master's company, Midas captured him with the lure of wine. He treated the old satyr hospitably, and then after returning him to the god, was rewarded with a wish. He prayed for a golden touch, a boon which quickly proved a curse when the king discovered his food was also transformed. Petitioning the god again, he was instructed to bathe in the river Pactolos, which not only rid him of the power, but also imbued the river's sands with gold. So this is a cautionary tale that is really making a lot more sense to me as I'm learning different languages and histories around these systems. It's really the warning of turning all of these turning beauty into something that we exchange as monetary currency. There are so many things in this world that we've kind of stripped of any type of intrinsic meaning, and we've created a quantitative meaning to them rather than a qualitative one. If we strip all of our natural resources and turn it into currency, there's nothing left to grow food. This is really the lesson of King Midas. If we had that golden touch, and we touched our loved ones, and then they became gold. If we sold them out, right? We wouldn't have those relationships anymore. We wouldn't have that support that we come to rely on with our loved ones. It really is an amazing tale for these times. So how do we start telling a new tale, right? How do we start telling a new story? Javier says, this card has such an annoying looking guy in it. It's like the Nine of Cups. Well, I don't think that is a coincidence. I think that you can see someone in this the Four of Pentacles card hoarding wealth, hoarding resources, sitting on a throne and trying to consolidate power. And again, there are people who have utilized the energy of this decan positively. One example of this is, I always go back to this example, but Dolly Parton, who became very wealthy, but has used that wealth to uplift her community. Now, I'm sure that there are things that aren't perfect about the way that she's done that, but that is a stark contrast in my mind to someone who also embodies this decan, Jeffrey Bezos. Okay, like he hoarded an ungodly amount of wealth to the very real detriment of his fellow human beings. And it is ironic to me that his company, Amazon, is really about trying to facilitate exchanges, right? So he's doing that part of Capricorn. If we take out the moral judgment about it, he's doing that part really well. But if we put back our caps and saying, well, what are the externalized costs of that? Well, the externalization of costs are that a lot of small businesses are going out of business because of the cheap exchange of goods that are consolidated with that particular monopoly. The workers that are doing these deliveries are being mistreated, having to urinate in like a Coke can or something like that because they're not given enough lead time to deliver these goods. The working conditions in the warehouses are a constant source of challenge. And, you know, this one individual has so much resources and power that people like that and him, like Elon Musk, etc., have an enormous amount of influence in political elections so that they can keep perpetuating the myth of exponential growth. So those are externalizations of costs. We also don't really understand the costs of the waste that is created through all of this, right? So when we make stuff, when we turn nature into a product, eventually that product, if we were doing it well, could be returned back to the earth without creating pollution. Well, that's not how we've lived for a number, well, at least the last couple hundred years. When we make something, when we turn a tree into something, or we turn oil into plastic, what is returned back to the earth does not disintegrate and return back into the cycle. We're not adding anything to our mother, to our lover, right? We're just creating this like choking kind of experience where the oceans are warming and full of garbage. Our waterways are choked with chemicals and with trash. It is not a sustainable system. And this is something that we're going to have to consider moving forward with Capricorn III is how do we start creating and facilitating exchanges in ways that don't either become an endpoint for the resources or have externalized costs that destroy the ability to continue to facilitate life on this planet. I mean, that's really what it boils down to, doesn't it? I hate to be hyperbolic about it, but we really are facing a crisis of whether life continues on this planet. And we're going to have to shift our stories to continue to survive. Ani says, well, Jeff Bezos has a Cap 3 stellium in the 10th and got a stereotype, so the positive version is welcome. Right. And maybe you made that comment before I launched into my Jeff Bezos thing, but yeah, there are different archetypes, right? So how do we, I think it is a mistake to demonize any particular decan in the astrological wheel. Everything has a purpose. Yeah, Javier says, reminds me of the hunting of the buffalo. Exactly. What happened with the great herds of buffalo in North America? The indigenous cultures only took what they needed and then let the resource renew itself. Okay, they used the whole buffalo. Whereas when colonization forces came to this continent, I mean, anyone who's seen Dances with Wolves has a visceral memory of what happened when people came and started just killing great herds of buffalo, taking one tiny piece of it and letting the carcasses just rot. And what that does is that's insulting the gift that the earth has given you to the point where it can't give anymore. Imagine someone gives you a gift, and instead of saying thank you, you take that gift and you pull down your pants and you take a piss on it and then you stomp on it and smash it right in front of their face. That person's not going to really want to give to you anymore. When we show gratitude and appreciation and reciprocity, then we start to grease the wheels for that gift kind of culture to work. And it does come through trust too, right? But going back to the point of every single part of the zodiac has a purpose. What is the purpose of Capricorn III? Well, I think that the new story we can start to tell here with this sun and moon, in this new moon, is one of responsibility towards each other. I saw a really great clip the other day, and it was from Steve Irwin. You familiar with Steve Irwin? Steve Irwin was the the Australian guy that was a conservationist, and he educated people about the beauty of nature. He led conservation efforts, and there's this clip with him and his wife, who his wife staring on lovingly to Steve Irwin as he's just passionately explaining why he wants money. He's like, I love money. I'll take money from whoever. I don't care where it comes from. And you know what I'll do with that money? I'm going to take that money and I'm going to go buy land. And I'm going to go buy land and I'm going to create habitat for the creatures that need it. I'm going to protect these lands. And he's like, give me all the money in the world. But his desire to do something with it, to be a philanthropist, to create habitat that is disappearing through the monetization of the natural commons. That's the type of energy with Capricorn III that in the new story that we can tell. It's not evil if you want to have money, but what do you do with it? Are you an endpoint, or are you using that to create infrastructure for your fellow human beings? Are you returning it back to the commons? What are you returning back to the earth? What is the reciprocal exchange that you have? And I think that we can do that at a various amount of scales. I think that a lot of things that we get, I don't know, something that gets us in over our heads is we think that we need to make everything huge, enormous. And sometimes a business can be much more effective when its overhead stays low, when it isn't overcommitted, right? When it hasn't hired too many employees or bought too many supplies that are too expensive for it to sell something at a reasonable price. These are things that we can get in over our heads with. Been counseling, my little Capricorn III daughter in this regard, is try not to get in over your head with your overhead. Be able to deliver on your promises. Be able to think about, if you do hire an employee, how can you serve that employee in the best way possible? How can you create a standard of living for them that is, quite frankly, equal to your own, because they are you and you are them, right? So I think that there's ways to utilize this energy that doesn't fall into the only story that we've been told by people like CEOs like Jeff Bezos, etc. Javier says, I've been learning about Mesoamerica and Mayan astrology. I'm feeling that earth call from my ancestors and the galactic center. Absolutely. I love it. I love that curiosity, and learning about our ancestors is so important and enriching. I've been trying to connect with just even some of my own family and ancestors through my reading and understanding. I have a lot of ancestry through Norwegian culture. My daughter's been kind of exploring her Norwegian roots. I also have a number of people in my family that were Mennonites, and they were leaders of their community through the Mennonite community. And one of the fundamental values of both the Amish and Mennonite communities is thrift, is being able to be efficient with your resources, and to be able to, release our attachment to hoarding more than we need. Javier says, this probably is this Capricorn moon hitting my Capricorn Cancer axis. Another example, Javier and Ani and everyone, my beautiful partner Tanya has a Capricorn III rising. And one of the things I've noticed with her is that she has been thrust into positions of authority because of her great commitment to being responsible for others. Same thing with my daughter. My daughter did an internship when she was in high school, and because she just kept showing up, they gave her more and more responsibility. And my partner, she's gone through a number of iterations of this, where whatever organization that she was a part of, when she finally moved on, whether it was her choice or another choice, like, they replaced her with 3 different people because she had taken on so much of the weight of responsibility. So one other thing I will say about Capricorn III before we move forward into other parts of this. I think it's very admirable for those who walk this decan to want to take on responsibility for managing either the resources or the functionality of a system. But what I will say, and what I have noticed, is that this decan is also a Jupiter Saphira decan in the Kabbalistic tree of life. So in the Kabbalistic tree of life, there are certain planets that are associated with these energetic centers. Jupiter brings us an abundance of the element that we are looking at. Sometimes it brings us too much of something. So this decan can be one where we recognize when we've taken on too much responsibility, when we've taken and we've become a stopping point for too many resources that they need to flow through us. The same is true for power. When we take on too much responsibility or power, that can lead to our downfall. It can also lead to these material resources that we're responsible for being a prison, right? Rather than empowering us, we feel beholden to them. We become a slave to them. If you look at the card that's associated with Capricorn, it's the Devil card. So I'm going to show you the Devil card. And in the Devil card, this is what we're talking about when we become enslaved to our material reality. So here is the Devil card, okay? And you can see there's two figures that are loosely chained to this block, right? Now, there are some connotations in this about not being tied to the physical world that I will push back on lightly. Again, I think it's a balance. It's more about the hoarding of materiality rather than materiality itself being evil, in my opinion. That is my opinion. You can choose to disagree with me. That's fine. But I think that when we hoard power, we can start to crumble under the weight of that power and responsibility. So one of the new narratives for Capricorn III that I think is really important, learning how to delegate, learning how to share power with others, learning how to share decision-making responsibility. If you feel like you have to manage every single part of your business at every single moment, first of all, you're a micromanager, right? Second of all, you will burn out, especially when things start to grow. If things grow beyond what you can do as an individual, you have to have people that you trust counseling you. You have to give up some of that power to them. That's where we get the reciprocal exchanges. We empower others. So in Capricorn III, it's not just about being a boss. It's not just about being a CEO. It's about empowering others to also be able to make wise decisions, to also be able to make wise choices, and to trust them and facilitate that trust between one another. I'm just realizing so much how, as a society, we mistrust one another. And I don't mean that just as a society. I am including myself in this. Like I grew up in a broken home. I grew up in a home of divorce, multiple divorces, like 3 or 4 divorces. I had like 4 different fathers and like 3 different stepmoms. And what the narrative that I took on with a lot of this is that, well, more for me is less for you, right? Like, and this came to me, I had a real epiphany reading this book this morning. The product that was not being shared, or that had to be shared in a zero-sum game, was me, right? Was me. It was the time that my parents spent with me. And when I visited one person, the other person was sad. The other person was missing out. Do you see what I'm saying? And there was so much hand-wringing and fighting about all of those things and schedules. And to be quite frank, some of that repeated in my own journey with my daughter. And it's so sad because it internalizes this scarcity mindset of like even our time together with one another is competitive. And I've been trying to undo that, unravel that knot, undo that programming, of saying, no, I don't have to be so defensive of either time, space, right? Resources, this, and it takes a long time to do. It takes some individual looking in the mirror and saying, how have I bought into, or what narratives have come to me through my youth and through my experiences that have caused me to mistrust life, that have caused me to mistrust my neighbors, my fellow community members, my fellow Americans, my fellow countrymen, my fellow earthlings, right? I really think it's about bridging and building trust once again. In this decan, I think we can do that. I think we can. Javier says, this Capricorn moon hitting my Capricorn Cancer axis stellium. So this is going to light your chart up, Javier. Lauren is here. Painted Turtle, what's up, friend? Says, an interesting thing about Dolly Parton is that her sun is Capricorn 3, which is co-present with Mercury and Venus. The sun represented her father. Her father, he was a father of 12 that could not read or write, but was able to conduct business with good relationships. That restricted Mercury of reading and writing, also something she carries on with Venus. Right, relationships. That's what really business is. It's relationships. So how do we start making relationships with one another under the auspices of a Capricorn new moon that are joyous rather than conflicted, rather than ones that are agrimonious, right? How do we start building trustworthy relationships? Well, it starts with being trustworthy. It starts with honoring your commitments to one another. That's how you build trust, is you become trustworthy. You share what you have with others. You follow through on your word rather than breaking your word. This is another thing that is, I think, something that you can set intentions for with this new moon in Capricorn 3. How do I become trustworthy of people trusting me with responsibility and trusting me with relationship? How do I become a trustworthy partner with people in life rather than competitively hoarding everything and isolating myself further and further and further until everything I touch is golden, but I'm alone, I'm hungry, I'm starving, I'm isolated. There's nothing left if you keep turning everything that has inherent intrinsic meaning in your life into a number on a ledger. There's nothing left eventually. We're coming to that realization now that this system worked for a while the Earth was at a carrying capacity that could carry the weight of our waste, that could carry the weight of our growth. But we're coming to the edge of that, coming to the edge of the carrying capacity of the Earth for waste, coming to the edge of the carrying capacity for exponential growth. And this is where we start Ouroborosing. We start cannibalizing each other. We start eating our own tail. You see what I mean? It's wild to me. Lauren says, a book delivery by mail to young children she has devised with her organization to change other stories. Yeah, I really like a lot of what I've heard from Dolly Parton. You know, she seems to, her literacy efforts, right, that is serving your community. That is leaving a legacy with the resources that you've been able to accumulate and start facilitating. That is her giving back and starting to uphold a stability for the future and healing something within her own past, it sounds like, too. It's a good example of holding power of this card that is healthy. Exactly. Okay, so that's a sun and moon, Capricorn 3. Okay, a couple questions you can ask for yourself with this. What responsibilities have you taken on? Just understanding your responsibilities and getting clarity with that can be very helpful. When you don't even know all the things that you have to do, it's hard to get organized within that. Next, how can you manage this power with grace? We've been talking about different examples of power and how people have either abused power or have utilized it towards the collective good. How do you become graceful in your handling of power? How do you share power? I mean, this is another question, right? Are you hoarding resources or are you allowing them to flow? Again, when you hoard resources, there becomes a point where you become vulnerable, right? You have to erect all these walls and edifices to hold on to your wealth, to hold on to your power. You have to become an adversary of people to hold on to those things rather than a co-creator with them. You know, Charles makes a good point in this book. If you're hoarding gold and silver right now, eventually you're gonna, if the whole system collapses and you're like, well, I've got a bunch of gold, I'm not, reliant on the fiat currency that is just numbers on a page that isn't backed by any gold standard, eventually you're just going to have a compound to defend yourself, and you become even more isolated, right? Do you have enough guns to defend that gold and that silver? Some people are like, yeah, I do. But eventually, what kind of life is that, where you're just completely in a prison? You become prisoner to that. And this is one of the main themes with Capricorn is we are inside the walls and we're defending ourselves against everything that is outside. That eventually becomes a really lonely life, one that you're not really doing anything of value. You're just sitting there in your corner in your panic room, scared that someone's going to take what you have away from you. What kind of life is that? To me, that's not a life. That is a prison sentence. So how do you handle and manage your power with grace? Are you hoarding resources, or are you allowing them to flow so that you don't have to be afraid of your neighbors? He makes the argument, you don't need to be hoarding gold and silver right now. What you need to be doing is you need to be creating relationships with people in your neighborhoods. So what happens if the system does collapse? Are you going to be sitting in your panic room, or are you going to have the relationships you facilitated with people that you've shown care to, that will in turn show care towards you? So do you own your possessions, or do they own you? A good question to ask here. This one is an important one with Capricorn 3. How much is enough, right? We have this addiction to number go up type of economics. We have the people that are in the billionaires in our society have such a sickness of mind that nothing is ever enough. It doesn't matter how much money they have. There's a song that I would direct you towards. The song I picked this week was Black Capricorn Day by Jamiroquai, but there's another song by Metric that I'm going to look up the title of this, that I was like, that would have been a really good song for this too. Metric, if you're not familiar, they had a song in Scott Pilgrim that was covered by Brie Larson, but the song that I'm referring to is Gold, Guns, and Girls by Metric. Check that out. And it just says, will it ever be enough? It's like all the guns, all the gold, all the girls. Will it ever be enough? And that's just and for the billionaire class, the answer is no, because they're trying to fill a hole that they've created through isolation. And you can't fill it by accumulating more and more and more and more. It's not fillable in that way. So how much is enough in your life? And if you have more than you need, how do you share it and keep it flowing so that you are recognizing that what you do for others, you are doing for yourself? Okay. Is this throne a palace or a prison? We've talked about that with the survival instincts of, wanting to create a bigger and better fortress. All you're doing is creating a bigger and better prison for yourself, in my opinion. And I've been guilty of this in the past. I've been guilty of this type of thinking. And it is very eye-opening to try to learn a new narrative and to try to embrace that narrative, because the one that we've been working on, it's empty. I mean, look around you. Look in the news right now. Look at the mistrust and what that has created. Look at what the hoarding and the isolation of great amounts of wealth and the wealth inequality has led to. Is this the world that we want to continue to uphold? Are these the systems that we want to continue to pour energy into? It's not for me, and to be able to make those changes, we have to have a new vision first. And that brings us to Saturn in Pisces 3. This is the host of this new moon, okay? Now, this is the last kind of Capricorn series that is going to have Saturn in Pisces for quite some time. And we are about to see a shift in the way that Saturn operates into Aries. We got a preview of that when Saturn was in Aries in the beginning of 2025 for a few months. And this, I think, is our last opportunity for 30-ish years to bring a new vision into reality and to be able to concretize something new, we have to think outside the box. We have to say, what is the most, just like this book. I mean, these are the questions we can ask ourselves. What is the more beautiful world that our hearts know is possible? Some people who are cynics will say, you're just naive. That's not how the world works. We're just going to cannibalize each other till the end of time. It takes a lot of courage, I think, to ask the question, maybe there's a better way. I think Saturn in Pisces is helping to facilitate this. You see the 10 of Cups card associated with the third decan of Pisces. And this is a very idealistic card. Now, there are costs associated with this idealism. Austin Coppock, in his beautiful book, 36 Faces, calls this a cup of blood, because this is a Mars-ruled decan in a Jupiter-ruled sign. Jupiter is the visionary. Jupiter says, what is possible? What beautiful, expansive order, peace, etc. is possible. Mars says, what are you going to give up? What will you have to release to make that possible? What will you have to sacrifice to make that possible? I think that the things I've been talking about today will require some sacrifice. They will require the sacrifice of old ideas, of old ways of organizing our beliefs around what is possible. It might require a different way of creating the things in our life. It may require changing the means of exchange. But what do we gain through that? I think this is the better question. If what we're gaining is trust in one another, if what we're gaining is compassion, if what we're gaining is sustainability of life on this earth, of a balanced, caring relationship with our lover earth, not just our mother, but our lover, so that we care about what happens to them, not just what happens to us. We gain all of that when we start making those changes. And the daimon in this decan is Elpis, which translates to hope. And one of the hallmarks of this decan is having a wide swing of emotions. I don't know about all of you, but whenever we look at the news lately, there's all sorts of wild swings of emotions happening. There's the depths of despair when we see people losing their lives and their freedoms because of authoritarian power, because of greed, because of mistrust. And I think that sometimes we have to experience that. This is the shown to us through the story of the jar of Pandora, where all of the ills of being human were unleashed onto the world. Death, old age, war, all of these things. But Elpis was what remained under the lip of the jar. And Elpis translates to that hope. To be able to continue to be a human being when we have awareness of our impending death, we need to have hope. We need to think about how we make meaning out of the time that we have. And for us to envision a better world that is cooperative and not, based on suffering and scarcity and, a zero-sum game, we have to kind of have some hope and faith in one another. And I think this is the opportunity to put that vision out there. Think big, dream a little bit. What does that mean for you personally? It might mean something like you want to completely change the structures of your life, but you have to visualize what that success looks like. And it doesn't just look like a bottom line in a bank account ledger. What does your time look like? Are you doing something that you love, or are you a prisoner to it? Are you surrounded by people that you care about, sharing wonderful relationships with them, or are you despised because you're too arrogant to share any power or any credit or any of those things with someone else? I see this in our own community too, in our astrological community. Oftentimes, people who get into things like astrology, metaphysics, will start to feel like they have discovered something incredible. And they're right. They have discovered something incredible. This knowledge is amazing. This knowledge is so valuable, right? But then what happens is they said, well, I'm the one that discovered it, and it's mine now. And if you don't think about it exactly the same way that I do, you're wrong, or you're an asshole. And that's where we go wrong with this. The joy of discovery, everyone should be able to have that, even if we're discovering it at different times. How many times have we seen different inventive things happen over the course of history where multiple people were tapping into that same, vein of inspiration, and these things were erupting from the collective unconscious? It's beautiful to see it. And I think that what is it's based on the same ideas of scarcity consciousness that we're talking about with tangible things. We're trying to turn intellectual ideas into privatized property rather than taking them away from the collective and the commons. How do we share these ideas so that the spark of our idea inspires someone else towards a great life? This is one of the things that I just believe in wholeheartedly, that I keep my channel the way that I do. I'm sharing my insights with excitement so that I hope that it enriches your life, right? So that you take that idea and you build upon it. You take that idea and you say, you know what? I heard this great idea. Spencer had this idea. It probably wasn't just coming from him. He channeled it from some other source. Like, I read a book. I talk about like people like Austin Coppock here. I'm inspired by him. And I say, how do I build on that? How do I share this? Like, how do I spread this far and wide? And that will inspire someone else, to maybe put their little spin on it. Like, that's how culture is spread. And when we try to hoard ideas, intellectual property, etc., we become just like the Four of Pentacles, King Midas hoarder of material resources. We stop the flow. How many great ideas could be created if we were to share them with one another rather than saying, I am the ultimate authority on this? No, you're not. You're not God. Like, you know what I mean? Like, this is where we have to kind of start to release our attachment to being the one that came up with the idea, and just admire the idea that it came through us, that we were a vessel for this. That's incredible. Wow, that's an awesome idea. I can't believe that this came through me. Wouldn't it be amazing if it came through you too? Like, you know what I mean? Like, wouldn't you want other people to feel good like that, rather than just saying, I am the ultimate authority? I just bristle at that type of thing so much. And that's why a lot of times I stay out of some of the arguments associated with astrological technique. I also, really feel that divination, that astrology is divination, that tarot is divination, and that divination is based on entrainment. It's based on you making an agreement with some story, with some relationship with the divine, with some collective consciousness, and you're saying, I want to be told how things are through this language. I want to be shown the way through this particular set of circumstances and symbols. You know what the real interesting thing is? Those symbols and systems can be completely different, and you can still come to the similar truth. I've seen this through utilizing different systems like astrology, through tarot, through animals, through numbers. If you entrain yourself to these different things, a lot of times they're saying very, very similar things. They're just a different language that you're speaking. So what you're doing is you're saying to somebody, you speak German, but German is wrong. And we could say that this is a phone, and there is a word for phone in German. Okay. See what I'm saying here? there is a word for the phone in Spanish, and there's a word for phone in, I don't know, Swahili, right? And the interesting thing is, it's still a phone. You're just calling it something different. I think that I think it's so silly that we're like, well, your word for phone is wrong. You know, if you're communicating phone, whether it's in one language or the other, then it's not wrong. It's just different. It's just a different way of contextualizing it. So that's my thoughts on that. All right, let's see. Javier says, were other astrologers like that to you, Spencer? Yep, sometimes. And I will admit, there were times in my life where I was that person, where there is when you first start studying things like Hellenistic astrology, after studying pop astrology, there is this kind of like consciousness explosion of like, I've been doing this wrong the whole time. You know, like this is the real stuff. And you're like, that other stuff's garbage. And it's just such bullshit. Just because I'll tell you what, friends, for the 20 years that I studied astrology before I learned about Hellenistic astrology, I still got some pretty amazing insights from it. Was it as organized as it is now? Maybe not. But that's because I've become better at describing and training myself to the language that needs to come through me. It's not just a bunch of different, it's not like people speaking Spanish and German and Swahili all at the same time where you can't really like, what are you saying? This is too many people speaking at the same time. I like focused in on one particular language, and then the messages started coming to me clearer, right? And there were times in the past where I was like, oh, yeah, that's not the way to do it. But then I'd tell you the book that really opened my eyes to this was The Moment of Astrology by Jeffrey Cornelius. And that came to me through my studies through Nightlight. And that really just changed my mind on a lot of things and helped me to see this entrainment quality. Yeah, I have no patience for the intellectual territory marking pissing contests that I see sometimes in our community. It's why? Who does that serve beyond just the individuals? Are we serving our communities by doing that? I don't think we are. I am okay with having some debate about technique in the spirit of curiosity. Spirit of curiosity. Say, you know what? I've kind of got this idea floating around. What do you think about this? And then someone's like, well, I could see that. I think there might be some holes here, but like maybe we could figure this out, you know, like together. I love that. I think that was the spirit of Project Hindsight. You got some really intelligent people that came together and be like, let's figure this out. We got some new translations. Let's piece this thing together. And yeah, there were probably some arguments within that group as well. But I think that there was a spirit of discovery within that. And how do we have those conversations in the spirit of discovery rather than in the spirit of, you know, this is mine and I came up with this idea and blah, 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 right? Ani says, preach about elitism in astrology. Shame on those who hoard and capitalize off it without sharing the knowledge that was already there. It's a Highlander mentality. There can be only one. Absolutely. I agree 100%. 100%. And it's tough too, because we all want to make a living. And sometimes we feel like if the clients come to us or the students come to us, that there won't be anybody left. I don't think that's true. I think that at the end of the day, we are attractive to different people, right? There might be people that have had a similar life experience to me that want to work with me. They might really resonate with my message and my experiences. There might be someone that resonates with someone else in the field because of their experiences. And there's enough to go around. Do you know what I'm saying? In my opinion. So I've had to work through my own scarcity mindset with some of these things, and with my own, like, we've become trained to say, this is my idea, and aren't I great? And I've had to work through some of those things too. I've had some real eye-opening moments. I've had some real falls from grace with some relationships in my life because of that thinking. And I think that sometimes that's like the tower card, right? You get the lightning bolt of reality that shakes you out of a false belief. And sometimes it feels like your whole world's coming crashing down. But at the end of it, you look around and you're like, huh, I've just been liberated. Now what remains is actually truth, not this false ideal that I tried to uphold. Javier says, you always inspire me, Spencer. Oh, I appreciate that, Javier. I appreciate you, and I'm just doing my best. I'm just sharing my journey and my process, and I do care about my community, and hopefully that this helps you. But I'm going through it with you, and I'm not a perfect human being, but thank you for saying that. Appreciate you, and you inspire me. I'll throw it right back to you. There's so many things that you've done, Javier, in your life that are worthy of inspiration, and just the courage it takes to make a new life in a new country. It's incredible. This is the thing that is blowing my mind about the way that we're treating people and immigrants right now. It's such an inspiring journey that people make. It's the courage that they have to go to a place where they might not know the culture or speak the language, and to completely make a new start, really, in a lot of times for the good of their community and their family, to be able to send resources back to countries that have been ravaged by colonialism and debt. They're heroes. You all are heroes. I'm getting choked up thinking about it. But you inspire me, Javier, and keep on going. Ani says, it discourages me to want to contribute when powerful actors leading spiritual movements are hoarding it and not making room to grow the cause. Once one tastes power, it is easy to become entitled. Yeah, I think it is. But it will ultimately lead to your downfall, if you consolidate all that power. Lauren says, our ego's inclination towards my idea is going to be an interesting, humbling experience for some people when Uranus goes into Gemini for good in April. Yeah, I mean, think about AI, man. Like, AI is going to change a lot of this potentially, because everybody's going to be able to come up with things almost instantaneously. And I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying that, yeah, Uranus and Gemini going to shake up a lot of those things especially with intellectual property. Ani says, we need to be collaborating, not diverting schools of thought for one top hive mind. There's not enough people challenging the narrative on socially productive ways. From your mouth to community's ears, friend. It's not the rule, the exception, Javi. Harsh wake-up call for me, not so spiritually evolved, are we? Yeah. Ani says, thank you for saying the quiet part out loud, Spencer. This is why I show up. I appreciate you, friend. I try my best. Yeah, and then the Bobs broke up due to ego. Well, there you go. See, right? When we talk about Project Hindsight, I'm kind of behind in the chat here. It's easy for it to permeate things. Lauren says, I do think we are channels, and I've always appreciated your attitude inside and outside of class that makes space for new or contemplative ideas during discussion that nurtures how individuals think. You always have added something supplemental and nourishing to the conversation, that self-discovery can take the wheel instead of shutting down an idea or curiosity. I appreciate that. That is my ultimate goal. I think this is a Jupiter in Virgo maybe kind of thing. This is something me and Chuck Eisenstein share. Same placement, same almost exact degree of Jupiter. Curiosity, just not feeling like we have completely isolated and consolidated truth. And I think that when you truly are marveling at the joy of creation and the joy of the creation that flows through you, even through your own consciousness and brain, you're like, wow, that's amazing. I want to share that idea. I don't want to hoard it. That's the true essence of abundance. That's the true essence of wealth. It's really not about what you can hoard for yourself. It's what you can share with others. And in that case, I feel extremely wealthy with just being surrounded with so much knowledge and beautiful people in this community. I am so blessed with the people that come each week and share their insight and that come to the classes that we do. I'm so blessed to have all these books, to be able to have thousands of years of wisdom that can channel through me to other people. That's why we have books, so we can pass this on, right? I mean, it's just amazing. Ani says, we don't need permission. That's part of the social etiquette lie. We need to have courage and diplomacy to make room for those who are qualified if a seat isn't offered, if you ask me. Absolutely. Javier, yeah, you're welcome, friend. I really mean that. I'm really inspired by all of you, but especially inspired by those of you who have had the courage to make a new start somewhere that was unfamiliar. I mean, that is beautiful, right? It's beautiful what folks are doing. Okay, so this Saturn Pisces, it's emotional, right? Look at what we did there. We dissolved the barriers and boundaries between each other, just like Saturn and Pisces can sometimes do. Sometimes Saturn can erect boundaries. Pisces likes to dissolve boundaries. Now, this is also applying to Neptune. So Neptune's also a solvent. So we're dissolving the boundaries of, like, you know, protecting something to, or hoarding something, or hoarding knowledge, hoarding resources, all of these things. And when we dissolve those boundaries between one another, we all become enriched by the fertility of the fertile waters, right? Like the Nile River Valley that flooded every season. It created this beautiful fertile soil. And when we share those ideas, it creates fertility in our communities rather than scarcity. When we share resources, it creates fertility in our communities with one another rather than scarcity of resources, of food, of housing, etc. Okay, so this is a way we create fertility. A couple other things. So that was our Saturn and Pisces. Do me a favor, friends. Huge favor. Please like the video. Subscribe to the channel if you're new here. Welcome if you're new. Don't be shy if you're just listening in the background. Always love hearing some of your perspectives. I try to give as much of a voice to the community as I can, and while keeping it a reasonable time frame. I mean, you know me, I'm not super concerned about efficiency when it comes to you know, our time that we're talking, but that's because we just hold space for not only me talking, but for other people's viewpoints as well. So don't be shy if you're new here. I would love to hear from new people and new perspectives as well. As long as it's respectful. That's the one rule we have here. Just be respectful of one another. Serious Artisan says, well, I have Sun in 4 of Pentacles and Jupiter in 9 of Cups. How annoying am I? Not annoying at all. I think that you have a potential, like Sirius. So you have the potential to be a good facilitator of resources, of material structure and reality. If this is the Sirius that I think it is, you're extremely creative. You know, you're somebody who's put out so much amazing art into the world. And with Jupiter in 9 of Cups, I mean, that's one of the best Jupiter decans out there as far as being able to create and co-create with your imagination and turn it into something physical. So yeah, no, it's all beautiful. Maru says, I've been in the process of symbolic death for a few months to a new version and structure of myself before my Saturn return. It's been so literal that I've had a flies invasion, degradation. Ooh, that's a really interesting symbol coming to you, right? Flies this is where we get to really test our limits of seeing the beauty in all of creation, right? Because we kind of recoil at the flies because sometimes they can be disease spreaders, right? But flies, they perform such an important role in our ecosystems. They break down waste to turn it into something that creates future fertility. So Maru, with the flies coming with you, they are showing you that these things that you're breaking down in your life, these symbolic deaths, they can lead to that future fertility in your life. They're transformative. They're achemical, right? They're masters of alchemy. Flies are. I bet we haven't really contextualized flies as achemical masters before. I won't like be like hoarding that, but I think it's like that's kind of one of those moments like, yeah, flies are alchemists, right? That's cool. That's cool to think about it in that way. So Just appreciate the alchemy of the fly, my friend. Not just the card, you. Yes, Javier, absolutely. Okay. So let's keep looking at how this might unfold. Let's look at some of the other things. There are a couple other points of emphasis. So we talked about Saturn as host, and it's traveling with Neptune. I will also say that Mercury is going to be in a malefic enclosure for not very long, for maybe an afternoon. I'm kind of nervous about this now because I tried to schedule kind of a Zoom meeting with my family, my extended family. I've been having a really nice time connecting with parts of my extended family and seeing their faces and just kind of trying to reach out and birth that, right? Sometimes we lose track of people that we care about and we're like, I don't want to bother them, and our lives just get busy. But I'm finding, and with Tanya's family too, that man, you just reach out and organize something and it really feels like you can have these connections, even if it isn't perfect. It's something where we can exchange ideas and see each other's faces, and it's kind of nice. So I'm saying that because I have that meeting scheduled for tomorrow while Mercury is in malefic enclosure. So maybe be careful about your particular. Whoop. Oh man. Speaking of Mercury in malefic enclosure, my headphones are breaking. This is a problem. Let's see if I can get this back on here. Oh, I guess I need some new headphones. Hold on. There we go. I'll have to super glue that back together. Oh, fail. Anyway, that's not right. Hold on a second. Maybe we'll just have to do it without the headphones. Maybe if my beautiful partner is listening in the other room, she could bring me a pair of her headphones, but we'll see. Okay, so Mercury in malefic enclosure, things like your headphones might break in half in the middle of your live stream. But practically, what might we be experiencing with Mercury in malefic enclosure? Just maybe some challenges when the moon is unfolding, right? When the moon's unfolding over the course of the Sunday day period. It ends very shortly, so I don't think it extends beyond Sunday. But just something to keep in mind. The big thing that we are experiencing is the void of course moon, right? So this is the moon is void of course from the evening on the 18th, right after the moon is new in the afternoon, to the 22nd of January, 86 hours and 38 minutes, excuse me. So this is a really interesting exercise in patience, right? In patience. So if we are planting new seeds for the new moon in Capricorn, we may have to be patient in some of the manifestations, because a void of course moon, and we've had 2 of these already in January. Basically, it means that the moon isn't making an aspect for 30 degrees, and that can cross sign boundaries. It's not making an aspect to a traditional planet, and it can cross sign boundaries. And this is the Hellenistic definition. I believe this was one of the points of argument within the community recently that led to just people, I don't know, manifesting their shadow selves on some level. But we've had these periods of time this month where really it's more about how can you continue on things that you've already started, right? When we start something new under a void of course moon, it can often be described as being nothing will come of the matter, right? Where it can be really difficult to hold on a second. I really could use these headphones here. It can be difficult to see it manifest on the physical plane. I'm going to take one second. I'll be right back. I'm going to go get some headphones. Thanks for hanging with me. We've had a little snafus today, but I'll be right back, friends. All right. I have a backup set. And we're back. There we go. See if I can get myself composed here again. Let's see. All right, we're back. Sorry about that, friends. Just had a little bit of a technical equipment issue. These are amazing headphones that just kind of like cracked in half while I was doing my live here. But we figured it out. Okay, so that void of course moon we were talking about. First of all, I just want to acknowledge Ani. Thank you so much for your generosity today. Appreciate you. Thank you for supporting the channel. Thank you for coming and sharing your wisdom and your ideas. Thank you for supporting my partner and her business too. Appreciate you, friend. Headphone money. There you go. Perfect. I'll need it, right? Sometimes we have to sometimes things break down and we got to replace stuff. Perfect timing for the transit. Yeah, it was. Sometimes life imitates chart. I'm coming up with all sorts of little zingers today, aren't I? Life imitates chart. Now I won't. You can use it because I don't. It's not trademarked, right? I think one of the things that is fun sometimes, though, it's like I think people like to just be acknowledged. You know what I mean? I think we could share ideas. One of the things I'm really into is if I have an idea that I learned from someone, is just giving that person a shout out. You know, like our lineages are really important, and I think that that's something that makes us feel good when we share those ideas. But you know, that's just the last vestiges of ego too. So at some point, we just have to release that as well. Okay, so the moon void, of course, from the 18th to the 22nd, 86 hours. So this is from, you know, from Sunday night all the way till Thursday. We may be having some challenges just with things just not being able to coalesce the way that we want after we've put out our intentions at the new moon. So do me a huge favor, friends. If you're into intention setting, if you utilize the new moon for like magical ritual or things of that nature, just be patient with the outcome. You know, realize that Saturn gives its gifts slowly over time. It's not necessarily something that is about instant gratification. It's about delayed gratification. And this will be a test with that. What I like to do during void of course moons is I like to clean. I like to declutter things. I've been reading a lot during the void of course moon. So the books that I've already started, I think that that can be really helpful. Like if you have something that you're just continuing on, something that's low stakes, right? Something that isn't necessarily like it has to work out one particular way. Okay. As this unfolds, I'm just going to show you on the outer chart here some of the other things that are going on as it's going to unfold. So between the 18th and the 20th, Mercury, okay, all these planets, Mercury and Mars here, are going to sextile Saturn, and then they are going to trine Uranus, and then Mercury is going to be going into Aquarius. Okay, so this is seeing all these planets moving into Aquarius. The sun's moving into Aquarius on the 20th, 19th actually. Okay, and all these planets are going to start transitioning out from Capricorn into Aquarius. What does that mean? Well, I see the difference between Capricorn and Aquarius in a couple of different ways. I really like Joy Usher and the Tiny Universe. And she contextualizes the difference between Capricorn and Aquarius as one of either being inside the castle walls, like we've talked about how materiality can become a prison for us. It doesn't mean that it's separate from our spirituality. It just means that one way of treating relationships can become imprisoning by hoarding and becoming an endpoint. Aquarius is sort of a reaction to that on some level, where what has become solid and solidified starts to break up in the air. Like it becomes decentralized. It is everything that is outside of the castle walls. It is everything that is going off into the fringe of society and saying, I don't want to be a part of that centralized power anymore. I don't want to be in this prison. I don't believe in your prison system. I'm going off and I'm going to do my own thing, right? And it's not going to be one where I'm playing by your rules anymore. I also think that there's a dark side to Aquarius that isn't talked about enough. And I do think that Aquarius and Saturn, its role within that sign, speaks a lot towards intellectual imprisonment, intellectual boundaries, intellectual censorship. So I do feel like one of the things that we're going to start seeing is a shift from our focus on the material relationships and a shift towards the intellectual relationships that we have with one another, the exchanges of information. One of the hallmarks, I think, of Pluto in Aquarius has been an attempt by authoritarian regimes to limit press access, to limit and control the narrative. What Joy Usher describes Aquarius Saturn doing is saying, I'm going to only allow one version of the story to come out, and I'm going to cast all other versions of that story into darkness. We saw this happening just last week with the events in Minneapolis. We had what our eyes showed us, okay, a woman trying to leave the scene of conflict. And then we had what the powers that be tried to tell us we were seeing, that she was trying to run over some officer when we clearly could see that that wasn't the case. So it's an intellectual gaslighting. It's casting one narrative into darkness and only trying to support a different narrative. So be careful of that as these planets start to move into Aquarius. We're going to have Venus conjoining Pluto on the 19th, okay? So this is here's the Venus-Pluto conjunction. All of these planets, once they move into Aquarius, are going to start conjoining Pluto. What I see happening with that is, planets are going to start exposing the corruption of our ideals, the corruption of our information. It's going to highlight the people in exile. We talked a lot today about the courage of people who immigrate to other countries and the courage it takes to start over and to move through a land that is not native to you, right? I think that this is going to start bringing up some of those themes again. The decan that we see with Aquarius 1, 5 of Swords, this kind of going off into exile. Sometimes this is willingly, though. This is a Venus-ruled decan. We may see people leaving institutions as all of these planets start conjoining Pluto, where we say, this is corrupt. I don't want to be a part of this corrupt institution anymore. I'm going off and I'm going to try something different. And that takes a lot of courage. That takes a lot of bravery to do that. It's uncomfortable, right? But there's also freedom in that. There's freedom. There's also beauty in that as well. I think that what this decan of Aquarius shows us is the beauty of going off and doing our own thing and not necessarily being beholden to the centralized power or social expectation or social convention. So this is something that I think we might be seeing here. Javier says, I don't like that card either. Yeah, here's one thing I will say. One thing I've been thinking a lot about, Javier, is I like to use the Rider-Waite Tarot because of its universality, right? because a lot of the Decanic language came from some of these images. That being said, the more I learn about colonialism, the more I learn about usury, about Descartes and his attachment to rationality and the separation of the soul from the body, the less these images are resonating with me, right? A lot of these images came from a time period that was, based on a lot of these ideas being very present. There is also like I think a Catholic element to some of them as well. I believe some of the creators of this had a root in that, in some spiritual traditions that had a separation of nature and spirit. Now, people have been making new kinds of interpretations of decks for a long time. This might be something that we need to continue to do on. But most of those are at least inspired by some of these. An example of this, if you want a completely different way of looking at things, my friend, Nicola, has this beautiful deck called the Wild Way Oracle deck. I'll have to have her. I've been thinking about having her on the show to just talk about this. But she has these beautiful cards, that talk about, I'll try to find the Aquarius one, that are rooted in nature, right? Here's Aquarius 1. Cedar waxwings, right? It says, broaden your horizons. I mean, I like that image, going off and seeing something new. Like, we look at her little book here. What does it say? I've got her book somewhere. Anyway, there are so many different ways to create stories, new narratives, new stories. That the Rider-Waite-Smith Tarot is one interpretation and one way of telling a story. And it can be very helpful for telling the story if we've entrained ourselves to that system. Now, if that set of images doesn't feel like your truth anymore, then you entrain yourself to a new set of images that can represent your new truth. And it takes so much humility to let go of our attachment to not only symbols, but to stories, right? And this is something that I think that you bring up a great point, is how do we start changing our relationship, not just to the stories in our life, but the symbols that represent them? Money is a symbol. We have paper that has numbers printed on it. It's not backed by anything. Intrinsically, the piece of paper isn't worth much itself, but we have a social agreement with one another that says, if you have a $100 bill, I will exchange it for this amount of things. How do we start thinking of a new story with that, right? Ani says, I'd love to learn more about her tarot cards being her own. I love esoteric art decks drawn with skill, especially if there's a natural correspondence. Yeah, so many great decks out there, and just find one that resonates with you. I do think that learning about the decans, I liked using the Rider-Waite-Smith deck because it has, I think symbols work in this way. This is kind of a interesting way of thinking of things. It's not that we can just entrain, well, we can entrain to whatever we want, but symbols can take on extra power if people collectively have been entraining to them over a long period of time. And this deck has been collectively entrained to for over 100 years. And it makes it very powerful. It's a very, very powerful oracle. So in that regard, I like going back to the source of these things. And then the Rider-Waite-Smith deck is not the only source tarot deck. There's the Marseille deck that is 300 years older than the Rider-Waite deck. And it has very similar images. So, but also there's different ways of thinking of things. Javier says, I just started doing that, looking at my other decks for insight on the decans. The 4 of coins in this one is a dung beetle hoarding for pink or purple clover flowers. Okay, let's look at it. Yeah, that's neat. I wish I had my book is kind of far away here. but I'm kind of looking through this here. I love the images. I just love the art on this deck. The Wild Way Tarot by Nicola Allen. She's from Scotland. And this deck it says Legacy. And this has two deer. Two like beautiful deer amongst the ferns in the forest, right? And she's drawing upon animals native to Scotland. And I think this is another angle to look at this as, what are we passing on? How do we take responsibility to preserve something for the future generations as well? Yeah, there's my stink beetle, right? From your cards, right? Yeah, bring her on. Yep. The entrainment brings the archetypes to life. Exactly. Yeah. Keep playing cards to remind me. Yeah, right. The playing cards like are the kind of the original tarot deck on some level that you get in a normal deck of playing cards. Winter says, that's a great deck, the Gentle Tarot by an indigenous artist named Mari. Unfortunately, it was a limited first run, but I think they're working on a second edition. They have a pocket edition available. I'll have to check that out, the Gentle Tarot. I'm going to put this in the Gentle Tarot, just so I remember it. Yeah, because I will say this. There are many of these images that are rooted in colonialism, especially the Two of Wands, which is the decan that Saturn and Neptune are moving into. That shows images of Alexander the Great thinking about what territory he wants to conquer. Now, that being said, while we have negative associations with that, we would be hard-pressed as a community to not see some of those themes being played out in our collective reality, right? You have these planets moving into the first decan of Aries, and we have a lot of saber rattling about annexation of territory. So there is truth that comes through that. But how do we start manipulating the story towards one that is more gentle, inclusive, cooperative? Like, there has to be ways to do so. Okay, nice. Love it. More decks. Lauren says, the deck you're showing is a good base language, a common English. That's what we can appreciate about it. It's long-standing artistic survival, a generational feel through imagery, like a black and white pick can offer in essence. Yeah, exactly. It's somewhat of a standardization, just like we can have similar feelings about Hellenistic astrology. It can be somewhat of a standardized language that we can sort of sometimes make some little adjustments here and there that people have done over the course of time. But the core essence of those symbols remains. The core essence of Aries 1, for example, may be severing and separating and severing from a collective to go your own way, right? The core essence of Aquarius 1 may be leaving behind some kind of familiarity in search of something beautiful in a foreign place. Maybe these cedar waxwings that we see here in this card that Nicola was talking about, I don't have her book in front of me, but maybe they're migratory. Maybe they're going off in search of tasty berries somewhere else that's not their normal home. So there's all sorts of different ways to see how those things are going to manifest, and maybe in a nonviolent way, right? Okay, so let's keep going here. Venus conjunct Pluto on the 19th. We have, let's see, I gotta pull this down here. We've got Saturn sextiling Uranus and Mercury moving into Aquarius on the 20th. So this is on the 20th. Now you got Mercury getting ready to Cazimi, right? The first aspect, this is crazy. The first aspect of this new moon is 18 degrees Pisces, trining Jupiter retrograde. The first traditional aspect on the 22nd. That's the end of our void, of course. So normally we would have an aspect that would happen much sooner when the moon separates from 15 degrees from the sun. But in this case, it takes even longer, right? So oftentimes the first aspect can show us sort of whether it's going to be easier or harder, And with this trine to Jupiter, maybe there's some positive things that come out of the seeds that we're planting, right? Maybe there's some real positive things that come out of the discussions that we're throwing around today, and becoming curious about new narratives that we can create for our communities that will uplift each other. Mars is going to sextile Saturn and Neptune, trine Uranus, and then move into Aquarius between the 20th and the 23rd. Okay, so this is a pattern that we talked about a lot in the astrology of January. Planets sextiling Saturn and Neptune, trining Uranus before moving out of Capricorn, and then moving into Aquarius, and then they will conjoin Pluto. The Mercury cazimi is on the 21st, as you can see here, with 1 degree Aquarius. New ideas, right? New ideas coming that might be outside the box thinking. Maybe we're so fed up with injustices that we're like, I don't want to participate in this anymore. Maybe we've been giving money to a company that we don't agree with, and we're like, I don't want to invest in that anymore. I want to completely demonetize this part of my life. Maybe instead of, oh geez, I have to think of some practical examples of this. I don't know. Maybe instead of going out to eat one night, you have a potluck with your neighbor, right? And each person brings a dish. Instead of patronizing a business that you don't believe in, or that is doing something that is extractive from the earth and creating externalization of costs, you do something that is giving back to the earth. You do something that is healing that land. There's all sorts of different things about that. I'm learning about it. Be patient with my delivery of these messages, please. Because I still have a whole second part of this book and a number of other books on the reading list associated with this topic. But brainstorming these ideas is important as a community, and just feeling good about it, right? These are my poor headphones falling down again. Okay, so Mercury cazimi, planting new seeds for new ideas, thinking outside the box, maybe going off into the fringe willingly. The other thing that is great about this decan is, since it's a Venus-ruled decan, we could create pieces of art from things that other people have discarded. There might be new ideas about how to upcycle or recycle things in our lives so that we are creating that zero waste type of ethos, where we're not adding to the carrying capacity of the earth as far as how much garbage and waste it can hold. Those might be things interesting ideas that might come out of that. All sorts of cool new manifestations potentially. Oh, let's see. Sacred Geometry 4, Javier says, Merkaba healing. Okay, nice. It's healing on all the levels of being. I like that. Ani says, I can testify Aries 1 and Aquarius 1. Yeah, right? You're living it. You're living it. So, Ani may have had to separate from some collective in the past. And it doesn't mean that she has to go and colonize a country and take its resources, as is suggested in the Two of Wands card. It just means that she may have to individuate, right, on some level from a collective that didn't resonate with her anymore. That's part of the essential part of that can be manifested in all sorts of different ways. Lauren says we should feel comfortable and stand in that low level energy to understand the people before us. To be unable to stand in that energy would be a miss too, I think. To pick up a book off your grandmother's shelf may shock your energy a bit with the density of what's hidden inside, but it's important to acknowledge what those before us had to carry for our load to get lighter in time, and to learn what dark energies to discard or ascend. Reading any old encyclopedia could really freak you out, but it's important to know what was. I agree. And this is what's great about how Charles Eisenstein contextualizes the last 10,000 years of monetary currency. It was our humanity's youth, and it doesn't mean that it was bad, or doesn't mean that it is invalid. It means that it was an evolving, right? It means that it was a beginning. Yeah, Lauren says in regards to the heaviness of tarot image. Yeah, there you go, right? We learn, without getting it down too much of a rabbit hole at this, friends. I love these conversations. I just, I have to be careful about how long I go on. You're bringing up a good point, because when we deal with especially decanic images, Decanic images, friends. I will guide you to my talk on the decans called Face Off. It's on my channel, Face Off. It's free here on YouTube. It's like 2.5 hours long. It's a history of the decans. The thing that I learned the most when doing that is these decanic images change over time, and they are informed. This is the important part. They're informed by the time and culture that they came from. So those values of those cultures, they were potentially meeting the needs of that particular milieu. Now that is very idealistic to say. Not all of those things were like meeting a need. There are things in the past that were not necessarily what we would consider meeting a need in that time or in any time. But they came out of that awareness that they had at that time, trying to meet a problem, a need, etc., or to explain their universe. So in regards to the Rider-Waite Tarot, that was a reflection of their reality. At that period in time, there was a lot of manifest destiny happening. There was colonization happening. It was a reflection of their reality. The same is true for the Egyptian viewpoint on the decans. That was a reflection of their reality that they were living at that time. So Lauren is right. You have to be able to disconnect, not disconnect. You have to be able to understand the essence of the symbol, and then also see that it is contextualized within the time and the space that that particular version of the symbol came to you from. That's why it's so important not to get fixated. I'm going to say it louder for the people in the back of the room. Fixated on some form of astrology or divination or symbolism that is rooted in one particular time period because they were meeting the needs of that particular time. That is, I'm going to speak out of both sides of my mouth here. There is an essence that animates these things. And when we become curious and attempt to apply the symbolic knowledge to our modern sensibilities, time period, problems, they can evolve. Symbols evolve. That's the beautiful thing about it. We can argue that those essences stay consistent, but I think even essence can evolve. But there are some things that are timeless. And how do we communicate those things through our modern sensibilities, meeting the needs of this moment? When we get so fixated on the past, when we get so fixated on those being the only symbols that are correct, we're getting stuck in a mindset from 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago. Again, the essence will come through if it is real truth, right? Truth is not limited by a symbol. You know what I'm saying? Like the essence of something is able to be expressed in many different ways. So yes, I agree. Ani says, I deleted my Amazon account and I belong to credit unions and navigate DeFi. Vote with your money. Yeah, absolutely. We've been trying to de-invest from Amazon ourselves. There are a lot of things in life where it was like, oh, that was convenient. That's the cheapest price. But it's the more steps that you can take of saying, I don't want to give them my money anymore, the better. We haven't completely gone to the completely deleted the account yet. Maybe we'll get to that point. I think you're inspiring me through your actions to do that more. But any of those little actions, they matter, you know? Megan says this too, says, I also deleted my Amazon account and Google accounts, Drive, App Store, etc. It was hard though. For apps, etc., there are open source options. Absolutely, Megan. And I have a friend, his name's Aaron Wolf, and he is my open source buddy. And he's always sending me alternatives with open source software. So maybe that's a project that is very Aquarian, where we're leaving behind the centralized powers. We're leaving behind the exploitative companies to try to find something that is much more in alignment with our own values. Now, that can be challenging sometimes. Functionality is important, and sometimes things don't work exactly the way we're used to, and there's a learning curve. It's hard to change everything all at once. Like I've even been looking at different ways to do my broadcast because all of these programs that are corporatized, when you become dependent on them, they have a blank check to keep increasing costs while also nerfing and enshittifying the functionality of these things. And that's happening across the board with email servers, with things like this program that I'm using, StreamYard, is they've been adding new features, but the costs have gone up and up and up. But like something like MailChimp, for example, they got bought out by a big corporate entity, Intuit. Does that sound familiar? Intuit, TurboTax. And once Intuit bought it, they just started taking away features that you were used to and charging more money for them. And that is really, we see this over and over and over again. And a lot of this is explained in Sacred Economics, because it's just every single thing is becoming cannibalized by the debt and usury monetary system. There's so many things. If we go back to envisioning what we want moving forward, there were so many communal things that we didn't necessarily have to pay for that we're monetizing. We didn't have to pay for like childcare in the past. We just took care of each other's kids. We didn't necessarily always have to pay for food. Sometimes we shared the food we had with our community members. You know, there's just so many things that are becoming exploited that are taking away from our quality of life. At the end of the day, if monetizing something takes away from your quality of life and the quality of life of others, you know, it makes a real interesting argument for demonetization of things, going back to some of these things where we just shared with one another. And I know that this isn't going to be, everyone's not going to be ready to get on that train or wavelength with me. And I understand that. And it's a risk, me even talking about it on some level, but it feels right in my heart. I think that's where I'm starting. I'm starting in my heart, right? And if something resonates with your heart, that you've heard me struggle on this channel, friends, about how do I sustain myself? How do I keep doing this? I'm not as worried about that right now. I realize that if I keep my generosity flowing, it is going to come back in ways that I just can't even imagine. And that's where the trust and the faith comes in with that. Now, again, there are practical solutions in this book that are coming. So stick with me. If you're interested in this kind of stuff, but you're like, Spencer, that's great in theory, but you haven't offered really any practical solutions. Stick with me in the weeks ahead. I'm learning about it. I'm trying to deprogram from some of the things that got us to this point. To me, that's how my daughter the other day was like, you know, I want to save the world and I'm going to do all these things to save the world. And I was like, yeah, maybe start smaller, and, you know, in my Virgo stellium way. And then she threw it back on me. She's like, well, what are you doing to save the world? I'm like, I'm reading this book and I'm talking to you about these ideas. Like, I just got done reading the first couple chapters and I started talking with her about it. And I said, I'm sharing this knowledge with you. And to me, this is going to the very fundamental core of what our issues are, which is we believe the myth that more for me is less for you, or less for you is more for me, right? That's the myth that is driving all of this, all of it. And by learning more and expanding our consciousness and then sharing those ideas with others without restraint, you will save the world. I told her, this is the tiny spark that lights an enormous fire of consciousness and light. If even one person benefits from some of these ideas, and they share it with someone else, it's just unstoppable. That's how fire works, right? So don't ever think that what you're doing is meaningless. Don't ever think that learning something new isn't saving the world. But if you do learn something new, share it with somebody. Don't just hold on to it. Don't hoard it. Don't copyright it. You know what I mean? Don't like put it behind a barrier. Share it with the world. That's how you're going to save the world. Lauren says, I think it'll be interesting too when Neptune moves into Pisces, and we have been presented through media, print, movies, and Instagram an illusionary and beautiful outward world that we can overly convince ourselves that the artistic world we created is the world that we live in. But when Neptune moves into Aries, all will be seeing more what can stand the heat. I agree with that. Ani says no one raindrop is responsible for the flood, but systemic bureaucracy reinforces a half-true narrative that we have individual impact. Movements require grassroots cooperations, trickle-up economics. I agree with that too. I was seeing something where someone was saying, I was listening to a podcast where they were talking about game theory and how destructive it is to think of in the terms of zero-sum economics, where if I win, someone else has to lose. You know, the one thing that was coming out of that for me was the argument that we have to build trust with one another. If we don't trust somebody, like let's say that we don't become trustworthy. Yes, an individual who doesn't follow the trust game, right? That doesn't play by the rules, play nice. They can accumulate more power and wealth and resources than an individual that isn't doing those things exploitatively. But the argument they were making is that that one individual that is hoarding, that is becoming an endpoint, that is extracting and externalizing costs, is not more powerful than a collective group of people that are playing nice and cooperating with one another. That was a huge like aha moment to me. I was like, yes, we gotta work together. We're not gonna beat the authoritarians and the billionaire oligarchs as individuals, but we will as a community of doing the right things and sharing and cooperating with one another. It's a big shift in consciousness, right? Lauren says, convincing ourselves that the artistic, saving the world requires getting wise to the reality that we are younger. Indoctrinated education isn't helping. I agree with that on some level. I think that it depends on what the education is, right? I think that, I don't know. I don't know if, I guess I will have to ask for more clarity on that. I don't think we should dismantle education systems. I don't think everyone should be homeschooled or things of that nature. But I do think that there are definitely narratives that we've been given that are destructive, like pledging allegiance to the flag, kind of thing. Like those kind of things are indoctrination, right? But there's other things where we're learning things in school that are valuable, and we're learning how to have relationships with one another. So I think that there's nuance for sure. Open source forever, yeah. Yeah, I think that's something that a project that I'd be interested in learning more about, more open source type stuff. But for those of you who are unfamiliar, open source technology is one that is able to be shared between people. Like, for example, Zoom is a closed source company that says, this is my proprietary software, and you have to pay me a subscription fee to use this software. And or something of that nature. Open source is where the code, anybody can use the code to create something. It's shared freely, and there's ways to build on someone else's ideas rather than someone closing off the doors to that technology. And there's a huge movement to incorporate that into more of the way that we live. Okay. The only way to win is to defect. There can be only one. See the trend? Book suggestion, Matt Ridley's The Origin of Virtue. You'd appreciate this short read, Spencer. Okay, cool. I'll check that out. I love all the book suggestions here. Let me put it into the search so I don't forget it. So I've got the Gentle Tarot open here. The Origin of Virtue. Okay, now I've searched it. And now I've got it. Keep the book suggestions coming, friends. Although I will say this, after reading a lot of this, my tendency to be a book hoarder, I'm just running out of space. I'm starting to be like, you know what? These was a wonderful invention? The library. because I can read a book and then I don't have to house it. So I may have to see if I can find these at the library or something of that nature. I'm also open to being gifted books if people want to send a book my way. I've gifted a lot of books to people over the course of my life, and I always like seeing things come to me. So that's also a possibility. Okay. Mercury Cazimi. I think we've talked about that a little bit. New start for ideas, maybe a decentralized idea that is moving out from the centralized power, like we were talking about divesting from things like Amazon or companies that are externalizing costs and exploiting the earth and developing nations and things of that nature. This is one thing that I've always felt this, but Charles Eisenstein has given me verbal delivery to that. The American economy has been built up on externalizing costs, right? We are taking resources from developing nations. We're sending our trash and our pollution to other countries. That's always sat really poorly with me. We externalized the labor when we were coming up in this world through slavery. There's got to be a different way. We can't keep on this way. There's just no one left to exploit anymore. And I don't know if you are familiar with the imperial boomerang, but the type of things that we do in other countries boomerang back onto us. And that's what we're seeing now with some of the fascist and authoritarian things that are playing out on our own soil. It's the boomerang coming back around. We've exploited as many people as we can exploit. And now it's coming back and coming back onto its own citizens. So it has to be a different narrative that we start creating with that. Ani is clarifying what I meant by indoctrinated education is the false history narrative. No common sense skills are taught, the mentality to follow rules, and you get promoted with 1,000 qualified acts. Yeah, I can agree with that. That's what I mean. The poor are taught to be good slaves in typical primary education in many universities. Change my mind. I think there's some parts of that, Ani. I think it just depends. It depends. I would resist making hyperbolic either or statements, I guess. There are some parts of education that are really valuable. And even in the system that we have, there are some excellent teachers that are doing amazing work. There are also some stories that have outlived their usefulness and that are definitely indoctrinating people into a certain capitalistic lifestyle. So both things are true. And I think that there are adjustments that can be made without necessarily destroying the whole thing, although I reserve the right to change my mind on that too. Yeah. Ani says, that's why I said most and try to avoid broad generalizations. Yes, glad I lean to spell and maths. Very useful. Learn to spell and maths. Yeah, exactly. Like learning how to read, learning how to, do arithmetic. Those are valuable skills. Learning, the ways that science and ecosystems work. Yeah. Anyway, okay. I think we're just getting long in the broadcast here, Ani. I think we're getting to the point where we got to power through this. We've had some I love these conversations, by the way. And for those of you who are still hanging with me, you're the real ones, all right? Because we've gone on a lot of different diverse directions. But I think a lot of it's rooted in just trying to visualize what kind of systems, like this Capricorn is a system-based sign, I think. What kind of reality can we organize that will be supportive to us rather than detrimental? I think a lot of people are feeling like this just doesn't work for us anymore. There's got to be something new that we can do. So this is an exploration for that. And just really appreciate all of you who have been contributing your ideas and your perspectives to it. I think it's important. Okay. 23rd, that's when we get the sun conjoining Pluto. Okay. Whoops. Oh, we went a little too quick here. So the sun is going to conjoin Pluto on the 23rd. I would say some of the nuance with this, think about the quality of each planet that's conjoining Pluto. When Venus conjoins Pluto, there could be something that's unearthed in our relationships, in our artistic sensibilities, in our desire nature. Sometimes Venus can also be a universal significator of the feminine principle or of women in general. So there could be something that's revealed with those types of themes potentially, but in our ability to create harmony with one another. The sun, it generally can be a universal signifier for people in authority, people in power. So when the sun is conjoining Pluto, there could be something that is revealed, a corruption that's revealed through leadership qualities. And then when Mars is moving through here, that's when we are really seeing kind of the desire to take action, the desire to separate conflict energy, and maybe the corruption that can come through conflict comes when we have Mars and Pluto coming together. That can be a difficult one too. Before we get to that one, we do have a first quarter moon on the 25th. And this is the first quarter of this phase where we have the sun in Aquarius 1 and the moon in Taurus 1, right? So we have the moon hanging out in a decan associated. Here's what I will say about this. So we have a lot of themes in Aquarius 1 with going off into the fringe, feeling in exile, feeling cast out from the centralized power, force, etc. We have the moon in a decan that is exalted, where it is very fertile, where it is associated with making a plan for future abundance. What I will warn you about with this first quarter moon is that first decan is also called the Lord of Worry, where because we may be fearing scarcity, we're making a plan. Now, I will go even further with this and say, how do we make plans that take into account the realization that the Aquarius sun gives us that we are all connected? So if we're making plans, if we're thinking about how to create abundance in our life, how do we create mutual flourishing? How do we create abundance that enriches others as well as ourselves? So this could be part of the challenge of this first quarter moon, potentially. And then we have a really big transit on the 26th where Neptune's moving into Aries, right? So here is 26, Neptune's moving into Aries right here. Big shift for our collective projections, for the way that we dissolve into nothingness or interconnectedness with one another. We might be starting to glamorize different things. You know, in Pisces, we are glamorizing our emotions, our compassion, our magical ability to manifest from our imaginations and make it real. What do we manifest, or what do we glamorize when Neptune's in Aries? We've talked a lot about this in the channel in the past, but you know, there might be more of a glamorization of radical independence, of violence, a glamorization of colonization and annexation of property, because we talked about the Two of Wands energy that permeates that. We may also glamorize severing and separating from a collective to individuate. Now, there's ways that can be positive. It doesn't necessarily have to be violent, negative. We have to start thinking and brainstorming new narratives that we can tell about this without being Pollyanna about it, right? How do we create and make new starts? How do we have courage to start something completely new? That could be an Aries, Neptune kind of quality. How do we have the energy to break through our old narratives to start something new that is in service of the collective, not just in service of us as individuals? Because if you think about how we've organized society, especially American culture, a lot of it is every person for themselves kind of thing. Like, pull yourselves up by your bootstraps, go start a pioneering homestead in the middle of nowhere, and you're weak if you can't take care of yourself. Maybe the new start we need is that is saying that narrative isn't correct. Maybe the new start we have is one where we collectively share and help each other. That can also be an Aries thing. That's severing from the collective of delusion that we are all separate beings, right? That could also be a way that manifests. So start thinking about who you want to be and how you want to make a new start. The Mars-Pluto conjunction is happening on the 27th. This is another somewhat volatile position for Mars and Pluto, it may bring, if let's say we think about this positively, negatively, it could be an intensification of violence. We shouldn't beat around the bush with that. We have to be realistic about some of these things. Idealistically, we could be bringing up things that need to be dealt with and then having the power of Mars to get rid of things that we don't need. Maybe and especially in Aquarius, it could be ideas. It could be false ideas. It could be stories where we are eliminating the old narrative to be able to write a new story. So examine your beliefs around this period of time. Throw out things that keep you in isolation. Throw out paranoia that keeps you in fear. Throw out the old story that more for me is less for you. I mean, these are the types of things that you can utilize this energy in a way that is supportive of life rather than against it. Mercury conjuncts Venus on the 29th. Okay, so this is another kind of interesting moment of transition. The second decan of Aquarius talks a lot about moving from one shore to the next. So we might be smoothing our transition from one state of mind or one state of being to the next around that period of time. And then we have the full moon in Leo at 13 degrees of Leo on February the 1st. So this is a point in our lunar cycle where we're trying to balance out potentially moving forward from a new one shore to the next in that second decan of Aquarius, and potentially a homecoming, being validated and acknowledged. We might be thinking outside the box. We might have to balance that with the need for being acknowledged by our peers. We talked a lot today about letting go of ego and letting go of hoarding not only physical resources and gifts, but also hoarding ideas and intellectual beliefs and things of that nature. This might be a balance point with that, where we have to learn how to, I think, validate each other in a way that is cooperative. How do we be acknowledged for sharing? Right? How do we validate someone who is sharing things rather than hoarding them? How do we validate people who are working for the good of the community rather than just their individual greatness? This could be part of the story that we could tell with this full moon, but we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it in a future live stream. February coming up, we've got all of these planets, Mercury, Venus, the Sun, and Mars squaring Uranus, so potential some shakeups. Saturn, Neptune conjunction in Aries is coming up, and then we have a Mercury retrograde in Pisces and a new moon solar eclipse in Aquarius 3, which we'll talk about as well. All right, my friends, that's what I've got for you. I have two more little things. I have an I-Ching reading, and I have an animal that we'll talk about here. And let's do that. So the hexagram that I have for you today is number 45, gathering together. Okay, gathering together. A lot of themes we've been talking about. And it's changing to hexagram number 20, viewing, overviewing, oversight. To me, hexagram 20 has a lot of Aquarian type of qualities, and I'll read you some excerpts from Jack Balkin. So gathering together translates to gathering, massing, joining others, assembling, having a common cause, holding yourself together, pitching in, cooperation between leaders and followers. Fostering unity takes skill. Well, let me read the judgment first. This is the actual text of the I-Ching judgment. Gathering together, success. The king approaches his temple. It is beneficial to see a great person. Success. It is beneficial to persevere. Bringing a great offering means good fortune. It is beneficial to have somewhere to go. Did you hear that? Bringing a great offering. Fostering unity takes skill and patience. In order to bring people together, whether in a community, a charitable organization, or a business, you must give them a shared sense of purpose. You must give the group direction. Hence, the text says it is beneficial to have somewhere to go. Common goals, shared symbols, and shared beliefs unite individuals and let them feel that they are working for something more than selfish interests or petty concerns. It is the duty of leaders to instill this sense of higher purpose. The text speaks of the king entering his temple. In ancient times, rulers would lead their people by making a sacrifice to their ancestors. This sacrifice reminded people that they had common origins and that together they were keeping faith with something noble and valuable. Calling upon common ancestors and invoking shared traditions was a powerful symbol of community, which constituted them as a single people with a common history and destiny. In the same way, if you are called to bring people together, you must instill in them a sense of shared history and purpose. We've talked about this today with like our shared lineages with the tarot and with astrology, etc. You must give them something to believe in. You must bring a great offering, something that performs the same function as the offering to the ancestors and the ancient kings made. You must find symbols that people can rally around and express their joint commitment. Another reason why symbols need to be fluid. So we have to find things that resonate with us in our own time and culture. If we just get fixated on the symbol and having it to be exactly the same way it was in that historic time period, it won't touch us in the same way. It won't resonate in the same heart-centered way. The essence reaches us rather than we getting fixated on the rational part of the symbol, which is, there's always that story about the finger pointing towards the moon. All right. It's like I don't know if it's like a Zen story or something like that, but think about the finger pointing towards the moon. This is a story of like religious history where everybody gets fixated on this finger rather than the moon. The moon is the essence. The finger is the symbol itself, or it is the guide to the symbol. When we say this, my finger is better than your finger, and my nails are painted red. No, my nails are painted black. No, my nails are long. No, mine are short. Like, you're missing out on the glory that is the moon. You know what I'm saying? Like, who fucking cares what color your fingernail polish is? Look, it's a beautiful moon, right? So that's why these symbols need to be fluid. And there's other stories that mystics teach about, where they're touching a part of an elephant, which is the essence of truth. And they say one is touching the trunk, and they say it feels like a snake. The other's touching the leg, and the other says, yeah, it feels like a tree trunk, The other's touching the tail, and it's like, and then so on and so forth. But they're all touching the elephant, right? They're missing out that they're trying to describe something from one particular small viewpoint and vantage point. They're all right. They're just touching a different part of it, right? All right. Lonnie says, this is why the Israelis are so successful. Roots. The people have a spiritual duty, good, bad, only they are unified, and this I-Ching captures this essence. Yeah. Unification with a shared sense of purpose. Now, that being said, we have to be careful about dogma, right? We have to be careful about getting so invested in and attached to that symbol that comes from one specific time period that we don't update them, that we don't continue to let them organically change. Okay. Let's see. So this is 2 changing lines. The first changing line is at the 4th place. It says, great good fortune, no blame. Line 4 is the position of a loyal minister who works with and supports the leader. The text suggests that good fortune comes from accepting this role and performing it faithfully. When you gather people together and work with them for the greater good, you need have no concerns. Your unselfish behavior will benefit everyone, including yourself. Help the leaders and be willing to do your part. Put the interests of the group above your own, and it will bring you both, you and the group, great success. Okay, so we've been talking about this all day long. Like when you act in the service of the collective, you as well benefit. You are part of that collective. When you keep the earth healthy, you have clean air to breathe. When you don't pollute into your local waterways, the fish that you eat from those waterways is not polluted with mercury and bullshit. That's the realization that we're all one, right? You can't take an action that doesn't affect yourself, even if you're contextualizing it by the way that you treat other people. It's that golden rule, right? Treat others the way that you want to be treated. It's really that kind of that simple on some level. 6 at the top. Lamenting and sighing, floods of tears, no blame. It says, you have tried to join in and make a contribution, but your efforts so far have not been appreciated. Do not blame yourself. People have misunderstood you. Re-examine your position and try to understand why you have failed to communicate your true motives. Express your regret and your sense of hurt openly, but without rancor or accusation. Then people may change their opinions of you, and it may be possible to join with them after all. So this is an interesting one. I mean, I'm thinking about just our talk today and trying to explore different stories of how we organize our society and each other and our choices. It's very easy for someone maybe to come in and see one tiny piece of it, misinterpret it, and feel upset by it. There may be people that have a different worldview and perspective that could be misinterpret what we're talking about today. And you know what? That's okay. Like that's part of the process of trying to ferret out what we are really trying to get to as a community. When we have new ideas, not everyone's going to agree with us. That's the beauty of co-creating with others. Somebody might have thought of something that you didn't. And then if you add in their perspective and see if you can find common ground with that, then you find something that works for everyone. So this is true with what we're going to see unfold with this new moon too. You may be trying to establish some new structure within your life. You might be experimenting with it and trying to do something that's for the good of the collective. You might make a mistake here and there, or you might just have a little blind spot about something. That's when you welcome in other people's opinions, welcome in other people's input, so that what you create together, like we talked about, a community that is cooperating with one another is much more powerful, even if they are playing by the rules, than someone who is not playing by the rules as an individual and exploiting people. That community is much more powerful. This is why people don't understand that, yeah, the oligarchs have some power right now, but we have an enormous amount of power as a community, like through like the actions of like general strikes, through voting with our dollars, through some of the actions we're seeing in places that authoritarian paramilitary forces are going into, through the protection that people are putting out there towards the most vulnerable populations. Humanity has always been more powerful when they work together than when they have been separated and isolated as individuals. That's the whole reason authoritarian powers try to separate and isolate you, because they know that. Because they know that if you're afraid and scared and isolated, then they have more power over you. Don't let them do that. Work with your neighbor. Work with your community. Work with people that maybe are different than you, but you're open to the spirit of cooperation. That's how you become empowered against forces that you feel are greater than you. I know that a lot of people have been coming to me like, I feel so helpless with all of this. That's because you've allowed yourself to believe the narrative that you're isolated, that you have to do it yourself. And if you try to do it yourself, you won't win. That's the stark truth of the reality that we're facing right now. If we try to go about this as isolated individuals, we're not going to win. We're not going to save the planet. We're not going to overcome authoritarianism and fascism. We'll lose. But if we work together, man, unstoppable, right? If we work together to take care of this planet as a lover, rather than just as a mother that we're exploiting without any return. If we work together to protect each other, we work together to share ideas rather than hoard them, share resources and share gifts with one another rather than hoard them or desecrate them. We're so powerful. I mean, I'm just overwhelmed by that feeling of how amazing that could be, right? Hexagram number 20 is viewing, observation, contemplation, serving as an example, taking an overview, understanding, self-examination, spiritual connection. Inner clarity leads to successful action in the outer world. I've said that a lot on this channel. I really truly believe in that, right? It says viewing, the absolute ablution has been made, but not yet the offering. Filled with trust and sincerity, they are reverent and dignified. The text describes a religious ceremony in ancient China, which the leader first pours out a ritual libation and then makes a sacrifice in front of the people. The text focuses on the magical moment between these two acts, when all attention is focused on the leader. Religious reverence and spiritual contemplation are at their height. In the Book of Changes, this hexagram is a metaphor for contemplation. Contemplation does not mean turning away from the world. Rather, it means taking the time to understand the workings of the universe, one's own nature, and one's place in the world of continuity and change. Contemplation is more than the accumulation of bits of knowledge, more than the assimilation and memorization of true factual propositions. It is a profoundly spiritual practice. Through opening oneself to hidden realities and to the possibilities latent in the world, the self is transformed. People who are able to contemplate themselves and the world with utter clarity are thereby imbued with the power to change themselves and the world. Their understanding gives them an uncanny spiritual force that naturally emanates from them and influences others. Sensing the power of their thought, others look up to them and follow them. This is the connection between looking and being looked up to, between contemplation and serving as an example for others. It is the connection between inner truth and outer effect. The challenge that you face now is to take a new look at the situation. Put aside older ways of imagining things and take a broader view. Be open-minded and do not allow your emotions to cloud your judgment. Try to face reality as it is and not as you might want it to be. Stop thinking about things from the standpoint of how they affect you personally and try to see the larger picture. Consider the origin of things and how matters arrived at the present state. This is what we've been talking about all day, friends. This has been my project. How did we get here? How did we get to this? I want to understand how we got to this point, right? Let's see. Consider the origins of things and how matters arrived at the present state. This is a time to learn to expand possibilities. If you can approach the situation with complete clarity and dispassion, you will be able to see the direction in which events are moving. And if you're willing to embrace truth, whatever it may be, you will gain enormous power and influence in the long run. Do not be too concerned if people do not listen to you at first. As people recognize, this is speaking to all you Aquarian energies out there, the far vision. We have to be able to do things that are delaying gratification. This is Saturnine. We might not get credit right away. This is what part of this full moon coming up in Aquarius might be. We might not get the validation that we want right away, but we have to do things with the next 7 generations in mind, right? This is what indigenous wisdom has taught us. As people recognize your commitment to truth and the clarity of your thought, they will come around. Knowledge is not simply a collection of true statements. It is a social practice and a terrain of power. The force of conformity is very strong. Many people compromise their beliefs and alter their understandings in order to fit in. Many others use knowledge not for the good of mankind, but to seize power and manipulate others in the short run. Do not follow this path. The right kind of influence will accrue to you only if you maintain your integrity. I love it. Love it. I love the I-Ching. It's probably my favorite oracle. Right? Let's see. Let's see. Ani's saying we should not profit. We should start non-profit schools. You're right. Homeschooling won't work. Yeah. I don't think schools should be for profit. Absolutely. I don't think a lot of things should be for profit, to be honest with you. I think we should deprofitize a lot of things. Although, again, give me some time to formulate these ideas more fully before criticizing me about them, I guess I would say. You can criticize me if you want. But what I will say is there's a lot of ideas that I have that I'm like, oh, this is cool. I want to learn more. I'm in the exploratory phase. And I hope that we as a community here can allow ourselves to be in that exploratory phase together while we formulate the practical ways to implement these things rather than just the intellectualization of it. And that being said, I got a buddy here, if you guys want to see. This is my buddy. He said, I don't want to sit with you today. This is my buddy Gandalf. Look at him. He's such a good boy. He says, I want to sit on your lap. He's been taking a nap right next to me. But now he's like, why are you picking me up? You're picking me up. Sirius says, going to cancel Netflix and Disney subscription. How Mercury Kazemi next to my Mercury Venus and the first decan Aquarius. Yeah, serious, I've been going through this myself. We canceled Peacock, we canceled Paramount Plus, we canceling Disney. I think we still have Prime, and Netflix, but de-investing from some of these things is, I think, positive. We've also busted out our DVD player, because guess what? You can get all sorts of stuff from the library. You know what I mean? You don't have to keep being a part of this machine. And I think there's so many little things like that we can do. And be gentle. I would say also too, be gentle with yourself, friends. Like, going against the grain can be exhausting. It can be really, really liberating in the long run, but sometimes in the short run, there can be some painful parts of it. Going against the conventional wisdom, quote unquote, can make us sometimes feel more isolated in the short term. But the more and more people that do this, and the more that we share our experiences, the more we create the beautiful world we know is possible. The more that we support one another in these changes and feel like, and share our experiences and say, hey, this worked for me, or this didn't work for me. And that can be so powerful as a community. Yeah. Okay. So let's keep going. We have one more thing to share today, and that is our animal. Check this out. It's a swordfish. I had difficulty finding an image of the swordfish that wasn't a black marlin or a sailfish, but this is an actual swordfish, if I'm not mistaken. Interesting animal, especially I think because of Saturn's hosting of this place from Pisces. Very, very watery place. And I'm going to read this to you from Animal Frequency by Melissa Alvarez about the swordfish. It says, swordfish can symbolize adventure and independence. Swordfish is a large fish that can grow to nearly 15 feet and weigh upwards of 1,400 pounds. It is known for its long sword-like bill. It instills a sense of swashbuckling action, risk-taking, and entitlement. Swordfish uses its unique bill when preying upon its meals and to eat. Its physical power and uniqueness make it command attention. You also have the ability to grab the attention of others because of your unique appearance or skills. It has a talent for being adventurous, ambitious, high energy, independent, intelligent, lucky, outgoing, positive, powerful, self-confident. It has a challenge of being arrogant, of bullying, of being cutthroat, risk-taking, ruthless, tactless. Some of the negative things sometimes associated with Capricorn is a ruthlessness, a desire to achieve the goal by any means possible, right? When swordfish appears, it means to live life to the fullest. You are an energetic, proud, but sometimes eccentric person who has big ideas and dreams, and you aren't afraid to go out and grab them. You're highly intelligent, adventurous, and work extremely well under pressure. You have a positive and happy outlook on life and are able to infuse those feelings into others with your outgoing energy and bubbly personality. Swordfish can take giant leaps out of the water, which indicates that you are willing to expose your inner self to others in order to spread positivity in life. You have a lot going for you. Things seem to always work in your favor, and you're at the right place at the right time. When things are always going good, it is easy to feel entitled to the great things you receive. Feelings of entitlement can change your personality because it is a negative trait. Swordfish warns you against developing this trait because it will slow down your forward movement and change your path. When you feel entitled, something will occur to somewhere down the road to show you that you are not. This animal assists you when you need to win. Swordfish can help you fight through any obstacles in your path with ease. You don't pay attention to the viewpoints of others when you're actively progressing to your goal. You can have tunnel vision and not see the waves you're creating when others get in your path. While you like to create waves, you enjoy seeing the shock effect and often find yourself in the midst of controversy. Swordfish encourages you to look in all directions as you move forward so you don't create waves so large that they will be difficult to overcome. When you're having a rare moment of weakness, Swordfish will give you the power to swim with enduring strength. Swordfish also helps you when you need to be more organized, are developing a strategic plan for a new big idea, or putting together a new wardrobe that is sure to grab attention. So, I think this is a warning when we're exploring these new ideas, when we're exploring new structures within our life with this Capricorn energy, be careful about being single-minded. Be careful about feeling like the world owes you something. I think this is in alignment with what we've been talking about. I think when we go to when we start to go to the collective and say, I deserve this because of this, I think it's backwards. I think that what Swordfish is saying to me is what can we give to the collective? I mean, it's cliche, but it's sort of the JFK kind of thing. What can, instead of asking what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. And this is not even just with your country. Instead of asking what does life owe me, how can you say, how can I contribute to life? How can I contribute to this beautiful planet, to this beautiful mother, this beautiful lover, this beautiful child? How do I contribute to my community? How do I share these things? How do I do so in a way that isn't stepping on others? This is often, like I said, often a criticism of Capricorn energy is that goat is getting up the mountain and they're gonna get there come hell or high water. But sometimes if you step on other people's heads to get up that mountain, well, you're going to find that you're very alone. And when you're exhausted at the top of that mountain, there's no one that's going to help carry you down the other side. And I think that these are important things to remember. And I think Swordfish can teach us that as we're exploring. But it also gives us the energy to explore new things. I think that the spirit of exploration is going to be important for 2026. How do we explore in ways that are in alignment with our highest potential, our highest integrity, and that are contributing to not only our own good fortune, but the good fortune of others? All right, my friends, that's what I've got. Javier says, cutie swordfish. It is kind of a cute little animal there, for sure. It's very colorful. It's a beautiful animal. Ani says, accountability and stewardship of what we are all entitled to share. I like it. There you go, right? We all are being gifted life. And what do we do with that gift? Do we appreciate it or do we waste it? We've all been given the gift of this beautiful planet. Do we take care of that gift or do we abuse it? These are all questions to ask. Mauro says, this has been a beautiful journey. Thank you, Spencer. Thank you, Mauro. Appreciate you, friend. I hope everything's going well over your way, you know? I know sometimes we focus on sometimes the stuff going on in America here, but I hope all of you friends across the pond and in different environments and different countries and areas are doing well too, and bringing some of these ideas, spreading them around to your communities and building trust with one another. I hope that you won't lose some of your faith in us here in the States that are going through some stuff. I guess I'll make an appeal to my international friends that a lot of this is the system that we were born into, and there are some of us over here in this country that see through the BS and would really love to create and co-create a beautiful world with all of you rather than by stepping on your head. So we're trying, and you know, we can do it. I really truly believe that. It might take some time, but I think we can do it together. Stephen says, good afternoon, even off. Appreciate you, Stephen. Megan says, thank you. This has been fun. Thank you, Megan. Appreciate you being here, friend. Ani says, thanks, Spencer. Been real. See you next time. Thank you, Ani. Thank you for all your wisdom that you've shared today. Javier says, damn it, we already overfished them. Another buffalo scenario. Oh, well, there you go. How do we repopulate the swordfish population, Javier? Let's brainstorm it. Yeah, Steven says, we've been feeling the sadness of what's happened here in the U.S. Yeah, and it's, again, imperialistic boomerang coming back. And I think that sometimes what goes around comes around. And I do think we can be part of the solution, though, Stephen. And keep the faith, keep the hope, keep an open mind, keep trying to be the change that you want to see, and work for the good of your community, wherever it is. Yeah, the good people speak louder than the politicians, Javier says. Absolutely. Absolutely. Look for the helpers, Mr. Rogers used to say. Look for the helpers and be the helper. It's as simple as that. All right, my friends. This was wonderful. Thank you for hanging out with me. Go find me over at spencermichaud.com. Follow me on social media at Spencer Michaud. Go hang out and follow Tanya at Third Coast Mojo. Support her business over there. And we'll see you the next time, friends. Try to maintain faith. Have a foundation of kindness. Be strong when you need to be strong, but try to rebuild trust with one another. Try to rebuild trust with not only with people in your community. Try to rebuild trust with the people that you disagree with, if you can, if that's possible. And it's going to take all of us to save this planet, not just the few of us that are trying to figure this out on this live stream. It's going to take everybody. So keep spreading these ideas far and wide, and we'll turn this little spark into I think maybe a great cleansing, healing flame, right? All right, friends. That's what I've got for you. Thank you so much for your kind words today. Appreciate you, friends. Appreciate you. Thank you, Stephen. All right. We'll see you the next time. Have a great one. And happy new moon this weekend. And we'll see you next week. Peace, friends.